We set to go?
Let's do it.
Okay. Sayreville Zoning Board of Adjustment is called to order for our July meeting. All rise for the pledge of the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Here.
Mr. Esposito.
Here.
Mr. Emma. Mrs. Gottstein. Here. Mr. Castle Grant. Mr. Bella.
Okay, thank you. Notice of this meeting has been satisfied in accordance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, by advertising in the Home News Tribune, posting on the bulletin board, and filing with the Borough Clerk. Okay, today we have four cases, and they will be in this order. Joseph Hayes, 7 Thomas Street, Bayshore Development on Brook and Schuessler. Dish Wireless on Highway 35 and 103 Properties Limited on Scott Avenue. Okay, we're taking the quicker cases first. Hopefully, we will get through all these really quickly. And then one other thing is there's a case on the agenda, case number 2319, 8 Lena Street. They have been postponed until the August meeting, but they did notify for this meeting. So if anyone is here for that case, 8 Lena. If you're here for that case because you were notified, they will not be heard tonight. They will be heard at our August meeting, and you won't receive any other notice. It's August 23rd. Okay. Anything else, John? Good to go? Good to go. Okay, so the first case this evening is case number 2317, Joseph Hayes, 7 Thomas Street. Please come forward.
Will you both be testifying? Yes, all right. Will you both please raise your right hand and repeat it? Well, do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before the board?
I solemnly swear.
Could you please give your name and address?
My name is Joe Hayes Sr., and I live at 7 Thomas Street, Sayreville, New Jersey.
I'm Diane Hayes, 7 Thomas Street, Sayreville, New Jersey.
Okay, thank you. So tell us what you would like to do, why you're here, and that's how we'll start.
Well, hello. Yeah, for the last few years, we've been thinking about putting a bathroom upstairs. So we finally come to the conclusion we're going to do it. So as you've seen on the plans, we're going to put the little family room in the back and the bathroom upstairs, and the one that's there now, they're going to take that out. Since we're getting older, we want a bathroom upstairs.
Okay, very good. Okay. And are you expanding the boundaries of the house, making the house larger? We're just going up.
Yeah, the size of it,
Yeah.
the size of it will be I'm just going to read my reading here, 18 by 20
Downstairs.
downstairs. It'll have a basement. And then the upper half is an 18 by 15.
Did you cover this one, John? Do we know the variances on this one? It's on the.
Sorry, so we have, yes, so there's a variance for the front yard setback because it's a corner property. So the addition, the existing structure is within the front yard setback on both Thomas and Cup Streets. The proposed addition is set back further than the line of the existing house, but still within what's required. It's at 8.8 feet where 20 feet is permitted. And then we're exceeding the allowable building coverage. 20% is allowed in the zone, 22.5% exists, and they're proposing 26.8%. And they're exceeding the allowable lot coverage. 45% is allowed in the zone, 52.8% exists, and 55% is proposed. So the addition to the house does increase the building coverage, does increase the impervious lot coverage on the site. So both of those existing non-conforming conditions are increasing a little bit, and the front yard setback.
If I read it right, front yard setback is really the same as it always was, though, right?
Yeah, so the closest point of the home to Cupsh will remain the same.
It's going up.
They're increasing the footprint, so they're pushing back, pushing the house out. So a new portion of the house will be within the required setback area. It won't be up as close as the existing house, though.
These questions we always ask, is the house going to remain a single-family house?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And will any additions and changes that you make to the outside be finished off so that it matches the existing house?
Yes, the outside of the house has to match everything to the existing.
Okay. And you're going to direct the water so that it goes towards the street?
Yes.
Okay. Any board members have any questions? No? How about any professionals?
Mr. Chairman, just for your information, typically the board on a corner lot is concerned about the site triangle. This is a pre-existing condition where the existing dwelling itself is in the site triangle, and what they're adding on is not making it any worse than it is.
Anyone else have any comments or questions, board members? No? Okay, so we'll open up this application to the public for comment. Anyone in the public wish to make a comment on this application? Please come forward. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public portion for this application. Any further comments? If not, can I have a motion on this application?
Motion to approve.
Second. Okay. Motion has been made and seconded to approve. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito,
Have me a bathroom, yes.
Mr. Emma,
Yes.
Mrs. Gottstein,
Yes.
Mr. Castle Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Bella.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So what happened? Do you know what happens next? You know what happens next?
No.
So our attorney will prepare a formal document. We call it more memorialization. We'll vote on that next meeting in August.
Okay.
And then you'll receive that, and then you can get your building permits.
Okay.
So you have to wait one more month.
Oh, I thought they're going to take me down back and shake me down for the money.
All right, our next case is Bayshore Development, Brook and Schuster Street. Well, Mr. Bella, just explain what's going on with you.
I'm going to recuse myself, Mr. Chairman, from this case. I live on this street, so I'll step down.
Okay. So Mr. Bella lives near this application, so he's going to step down. We're down to, I think, 5 members now. That's, you're okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, Mr. Boehm, go ahead.
Okay, good to see you all. This is a bulk variance as well, several variances. It's an unimproved lot on the corner of Schussler and Brook. It's 50 by 100 in width. And I have with me 3 people who will hopefully testify briefly for you. One is the member of the applicant, Scott Kessler, who has a business in town. And I also have Sri Valley and Allison Coughlin, an engineer and planner respectively. So Scott,
We have the second microphone up there because we are being, whatever it's called.
I don't know where the microphone is.
She's got it.
Okay.
So one for each of you so that we,
Last time I was here, you had 2 tables out here.
Blame COVID. No, he can- no, he
And do you want to swear in all the witnesses at once? Does that make sense?
We can do that, yes.
Okay. Sri, Allison.
So you'll have three. All right, if you could all raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before the board?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Right hands down. As you each come up, we'll ask your name, to spell your name and what you do.
All
Okay?
right. Scott, do you want to start out with your name? And
My name is Todd Kessler. I reside at 6A Seaglade Circle, Keyport, New Jersey, 07735. My spelling of my name is Todd, last name Kessler. And I'm one of the principals of Bayshore Development, who is under contract to purchase the property.
And you're also, part of your job during the day is with
Yeah,
real
yes.
estate agency in
Yes,
town? You wanna-
full-time employment as one of the broker owners of Century 21 Charles Smith Agency, real estate office on Route 35 in Sayreville.
And you indicated you're under contract to purchase this lot, and you've retained both the engineer and planner who are prepared to testify, correct?
That is correct.
And you're seeking bulk variances based upon the fact that it is a corner lot and to fit the one-family home in there.
Correct. Yes, we are looking to build a single-family, residential property.
Okay, and you've submitted the plans that the board has,
Yes, we
and
have.
that's what you intend to build, is that correct?
Yes, we intend to build a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath home with a 1-car garage.
And there'll be two-car parking in the driveway?
Correct. There will be 2-car driveway totaling 3 spaces.
Okay. And you're looking for bulk variances on Schussler of about 2 feet, less than 18 feet rather than 20 feet? Is that correct?
Correct, for the second front yard.
And a lot coverage of 2.32% over the limit?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I have no further questions of this witness.
It's a two-family, it's a 2-story property?
Yes, it would be a 2-story, single-family home.
Okay. Any members have questions for the applicant? Fine.
I have one. We got a site layout plan where architectural plans submitted or just the site layout?
They were not, but I do have and can distribute them if if the board would.
No,
like.
that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that, thanks.
Your contract buyer of this
That is correct.
pending variance?
Yes.
Okay. And has this always been a vacant lot?
As far as I know, it has always been a vacant lot.
Okay. Any other board members have questions? No? And you stated it's a single-family house. It won't be a two-family house.
It is a single-family house. It will not be a 2-family.
Just wanted to get that on the record as we always do. Okay. That's it.
Okay, Sri? All right. You were.
Please spell your name and.
Spell your name.
Sharif Ali, ALY, Amertech Engineering, 757 Ridgewood Avenue, North Brunswick.
Could you go both names, please? Please, she missed the spelling,
First
sorry.
name.
Sharif, SHARIF. Last name is Ali, ALY.
And would you please kindly state your credentials in terms of education,
Sure.
licenses? et
Well,
cetera?
last time I was here before COVID, but I'm a licensed civil engineer, state of New Jersey. Graduated back in '87, and since 1987, I've been practicing subdivision and site plans, and I've been before so many boards throughout Monmouth County, Middlesex County, Somerset County, Ocean, all over the place.
And your license current?
Yes,
Okay, so we'll approve you as an engineer.
thank you.
So you're retained by Mr. Kessler on behalf of Bayshore Development to do the plans that have been submitted in this matter?
Yes.
Kindly describe what was presented.
Yeah, so you heard there's a corner lot. It's a vacant corner lot occupying the northeastern corner of Schussler Street and Brook Avenue. It's a 50 by 100, just pretty much just like every lots in the within the surrounding area. The 50,000 square feet and happen to be in the R7 zone. R7 zone is 85,000 square feet.
Is that 5,000 and 8,500?
8,500, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. So you heard it's a single family, 2-story. That's our proposal. And a footprint on the ground is about 1,120 square feet, more or less. And we'll be meeting the residential site improvement standard as far as the number of parking spaces. We're talking about 4 bedrooms. We have 1 in the garage and will be 2 in the driveway. And since the lot is obviously this area is fully developed, so all utilities out in the street. So we're not going to be doing any extension, just tapping out to the street. But since this lot is undersized, it's 50 by 100, it's 5,000 square feet, we are seeking a lot area variance. Along with the lot area is a lot width. So the in the zone, in the R7 zone, you have 85 feet is required. We have 50, pretty much consistent with the neighborhood. So that's another variance that we are seeking. We happen to have 2 frontage. The frontage that we face in the street, we meeting the requirement, the 20 feet. And the rear of that, we meeting the requirement. It's 25, we have 28. The frontage along Schussler, which is pretty much acting as a side, that's the one that we short by 2 feet. And our planner will put the testimony that it's pretty lined up with the adjacent home in the back area. So it's lined up with that, but we short 2 feet, but just think about it as a side yard. Our side yard, we're meeting the requirements. So far we have a lot area, a lot frontage, and a lot width. The third one you heard about it is the building coverage. Again, this is a small footprint on the ground, is 1,120,000 square feet, a single family of 24 feet wide by 47. But the coverage, we exceeded the coverage by 2.3%. So the coverage in the zone is 20%, with 22.3. That's pretty much it. We're meeting the impervious coverage, which is the more important right now. So we have 4 variances that will be a testimony on now with our planner.
I have no further questions. So.
What about runoff water? Is this fairly flat?
Yeah, so the name of the game now, it's now these days a runoff, a rainfall. Our driveway will be drained out right straight to Brook Avenue. That water runoff from the street will be catch with the inlet that is in the rear of the property along Schussler Street. Most of the runoff on site, it comes from the building, and that will be all the roof leaders will be connected, and out to the inlet will be connected to the inlet. So what's left is that just runoff comes out of the grass area to the backyard, which is very, very tiny, small area.
Okay. Jay, a question about the driveway. Is there a design waiver or anything going on with the 3 feet, 3.5 feet next to near the property line?
It's typically supposed to be 5, so it would be a design waiver, 3.5 versus 5 on
Okay.
that side property line.
And what about the curb cut? Anything going on with that?
Curb cut is fine, Mr. Chairman, and also the house is located outside the site triangle. It is a corner lot, but the house is outside that site triangle.
Okay. And it looks like there's trees or some type of vegetation on the left-hand side, which I guess is the western side. Is that going to be removed, or can you just explain what that is?
So that's a regular line, that is the tree line, whatever trees within that area will be, the healthy trees will be saved.
Okay,
But most of the trees within the building envelope and within 10 feet or 20 feet of the building envelope will be all removed. I was just out there, and trees in that area is not really, a perfect location for the trees to be with a dense neighborhood like this neighborhood and proximity of the dwellings in the area. If we have another sandy storm, most of these trees will be on the ground. They pretty much, dead trees. There's a few healthy trees, but we'll show you another sandy storm will be on some of the roofs in the dwellings nearby.
I'm looking at a street view. Those trees don't look sick, but they would be knocked down. Is there any consideration for conservation?
Yeah, and so we are saving the ones along the streets away from the dwellings, but as you see, the lot is only 50 feet wide.
And the ones that are taken down, Jay, how does that affect? Like, don't they need to replace trees or contribute to tree bank if they're certain trees at a certain breast height diameter? Mr. Chairman, the tree ordinance doesn't apply to the single-family house construction. So if this was a subdivision and they were creating a new lot as part of the subdivision, then it would apply. But because it's just basically a bulk variance they're looking for, the tree ordinance wouldn't apply.
How many trees are you looking
good
at?
question now.
How many trees in total are coming down?
Just counting out from the street eyeball, you're talking about somewhere on like, I did not get deep inside, but I could see some of the dead ones from the branches from the outside. But it's close to about 20, 22 trees.
Members have questions? We're professionals? Sure.
That area, those 100-foot by 50-foot, that's like a standard lot for that area? I think you'll hear testimony from the applicant's planner concerning dwellings in the surrounding area, but a lot of the houses in the Morgan area are on 50 by 100, yes.
This is actually two lots, right?
Yeah, so just for the record, we are talking about lot 23 and lot 24 and block 472, yes.
So each of those lots is 25 feet wide,
So each one of the lots 25 feet wide.
but it's owned by one owner.
Yeah, so I guess that would be, the two lots will be consolidated for tax purposes and will be just one lot.
Is that something that we have to worry about?
Mr. Chairman, typically not. All the lots in Morgan area, they're all 25 by 100. People own 3 to give you conforming. A lot of them own 2, which creates this type variance situation. And tax records already considered as one lot with the separate one. Shows up as 2, but it's actually considered a 50 by 100 lot.
It's one bill, one tax bill.
And there's no vacant lots on the two sides.
Not not in this neighborhood.
I see buildings, but I just want to get that on the record. There's
Not in this
buildings on the
neighborhood, no.
two. Okay.
Most of the dwellings in the neighborhood, if you drive through, it's an old neighborhood, so you feel like the buildings pretty much run on top of the right of way.
Last chance. Any other questions? Okay, I guess
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Allison? Thanks. State your full name and spell your last.
Allison Coffin, it's Coffin.
And please tell the board briefly your background and
Sure.
education.
Well, for starters, I work for James W. Higgins. We're out of Ocean Township, New Jersey. I am a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm also certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. I've had my license and certification since 2005. In the years since then, I have been accepted as an expert in front of boards in more than 100 communities throughout the state. I have appeared here quite a number of times over the years, although I don't think I've been here in the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, we'll accept your credentials.
Okay, thank you.
Was it planning board or zoning board?
Zoning board.
Okay, okay. Zoning board. Okay,
Trying to remember if the recent one we did, my father came, Jim Higgins is my father, or if it was me. That was AP, the pile driving company.
was here last.
You've been retained by the applicant.
Yes, I would not be here if I had not
The
been.
area.
Yes,
Okay. You please tell the board what you found.
sure. Actually, I brought a colored picture if we want to submit this into evidence. Yep.
Sure.
And there's copies for all of the board members.
A1?
Yeah. And if you want, while you're passing that on, I'll go through my little preamble. The property that we're looking at is an existing 5,000 square foot lot. It's located at the intersection of Brook Avenue and Schussler, and the applicant is requesting the board's permission to develop this lot, which is an existing isolated vacant undersized lot with a single family home. The character of the immediate area, as the board can see from Exhibit A1, is a lot of 5,000 square foot lots identical to the subject site and a couple that are larger. It's the R7 zone. The uses permitted in this zone include single-family dwellings, institutional and public uses, essential services, community shelters, community residences, and existing agricultural uses, which does not apply to this property. But the proposed single-family home is a permitted use. The variances that the applicant is requesting for this are the lot area and width for the existing undersized lot, front yard setback to the Schussler frontage, and a building coverage. The variance relief that the applicant is requesting is all bulk or C variances, and there are two tests within the municipal land use law for this type of variance. The first is the C1 standard, that's the hardship variance, and it's appropriate when a lot's unique shape or topographic conditions or as a result of pre-existing structures creates a situation where the strict application of the ordinance would result in undue hardship. Well, we clearly have that situation here where we have a pre-existing undersized lot. The second standard is known as the C2 standard. It's justified when the variances advance the purposes of the municipal land use law and the benefits of the variance outweigh the detriments. It's my opinion that the variances that this applicant is requesting could be granted under either standard. Hardship in this instance exists with regard to the existing undersized nature of the site. The subject site is an existing 50 by 100 foot parcel. There is no vacant land available on either side of the site to expand the size of this lot. As a result, there's hardship relative to lot area and width, which are pre-existing non-conforming conditions. However, as this is an undersized lot, this also drives the front yard and building coverage variances. This is a corner lot. It has two front yards. The applicant proposes to meet the setback requirement from Brook Avenue frontage, but cannot meet it on the Schussler Avenue, Schussler Street side due to the narrowness of the site. The building coverage proposed here allows for a home that is of a size that's anticipated in the zone. If we took a 20% building coverage and applied it to a conforming corner lot, that would allow for a 1,700 square foot building footprint. Though the building coverage that's proposed is non-conforming, the coverage of 22.32%, which is a little bit over, allows for a 1,116 square foot footprint, which is consistent with the zoning intents and is actually lower than what you would expect on a corner lot. So relief is needed here because of the lot being undersized, not because the house is oversized. The other variances can be granted also under the C2 standard is that they advance the purposes of the municipal land use law, which regard to purpose E, which is to promote the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that would contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, regions, and preservation of the environment. Here, the proposed development of this undersized lot is consistent with the pattern in this neighborhood. There are 26 developed lots within 200 feet of the site. Of these, 17 are 50 by 100 foot lots, including 2 other corner lots. This indicates that this neighborhood character is predominantly residences on 5,000 square foot lots, which is what the applicant proposes. And purpose G is providing space in an appropriate location for residential use. Although the ordinance does permit a few other uses, none of them are as appropriate for this undersized lot in the middle of a developed residential area as the proposed dwelling is. The benefit of the variances here is to allow for an appropriate use and development of an isolated parcel in a manner which is consistent with the neighborhood density and character. And it's my opinion that there's no detriment to the variances that are proposed. The lot area and width, I know I'm beating this issue probably a little bit too much, but it's consistent with the neighborhood character. It's what it is. The proposed front yard variance to Schussler Street matches the setbacks of the nearby homes. It's actually a little bit greater. The home to the immediate east is about 17 feet, and the other homes on that side of Schussler are either consistent with that setback of 17 feet, or they're located closer to the street. So the 18-foot setback proposed would not be out of character. The building coverage variance here allows for a dwelling footprint that is consistent with the intent of the ordinance. In this instance, the larger footprint will also allow for this house to have a one-car garage. The variances that are requested, in my opinion, would not impair the intent and purpose of your master plan or zoning ordinance. This is an isolated existing undersized parcel. The development as proposed of this existing parcel would not substantially harm the larger intent of your R7 zone. We're not creating a new undersized lot. The use is permitted, appropriate, and consistent with the neighborhood. And for those reasons, it's my opinion that positive reasons exist to support the variances. They can be granted without detriment to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. And the granting of the variances would result in the use and development of this site, which would advance the larger purposes of your master plan and development ordinance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
Okay, John, any comments?
No, this is a relatively clear-cut situation with the undersized lot, and the pattern in the area is obviously typical. So I agree with the testimony that's provided.
Like, if my calculations here are right, the house is 24 feet wide. Is that true?
Yes.
That's sort of getting near the minimum of a normal house.
Yeah, you don't see a whole lot of freestanding dwellings narrower than that at this point. That's kind of into townhouse territory typically, where you have attached sides to it. So it's a modest new construction for sure.
Anybody else have any questions?
Sidewalks. Is there going to be a sidewalk?
The engineer.
I don't know the answer to that.
They see that on street, it
Mhm.
stops at property.
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman, I think I can clarify for the board. The majority of the houses in that area do not have sidewalk. You're going to see a few, if you're looking on Google, that have it, but the majority, the adjacent on either side of this lot do not have sidewalk. Across the street doesn't have it. So the pattern is not to have sidewalk in this area. That's a policy decision by the board, but typically you kind of look at the adjacent properties to see if there's a consistent pattern of sidewalk, and if there's a gap, you'll ask that it be filled in. In this case, you really don't have a pattern of sidewalk, so it's up to the board if you want to require that.
Your conversations in the audience are being picked up by our system and being sent out on the, so if you really must, please go into the hallway. Thank you. Appreciate it. You weren't really that loud, but I guess our microphones are real sensitive. Thank you.
Just on the sidewalk issue, we were talking about trees before. It does look like if a sidewalk were installed, then most of all of the trees would have to come down at that point. So we have a trade-off to decide which way, if there's a thought about requiring sidewalk, just want to make sure that we understand that it would require removal of more trees. Yeah.
Mr. Emma is correct. There is sidewalk on the lot that's, I guess, to the north of this property. But along Brook in the area across the street, there's not sidewalk.
Okay, no proposed sidewalks. That was
Well, we are not proposing sidewalks, and you heard that Brook, all along Brook, there is no sidewalks. Schussler, yes, there is a sidewalk, but if you would like to construct that sidewalk, then all the trees and along the right of way will be gone very much. So it's a choice between sidewalks and trees. We prefer to keep the trees for shade trees, but
Okay.
We
Well, that's,
defer to the board, but I think it's
Yes.
smarter to keep the trees, to be honest with you.
okay. Any board members have an opinion or?
I'd love to keep the trees too.
Yeah.
There's a public safety issue. I don't know if that's an required sidewalk. Ask applicants. Mr. Chairman, typically on the bulk variance type applications that come before the board, you don't address the sidewalk issue. When you do have a subdivision or a new house construction, you look at it and you do look at the surrounding area. So you could require it, it could be justified based on the sidewalk to the north. You're trading off the sidewalk and the trees if you allow it to go in. But along the Brook Avenue frontage, there really is not a pattern of sidewalk in the area.
Right, thank you.
thank you.
That concludes our presentation.
Okay, any other questions for the planner or testimony? No, okay. And that concludes your presentation? Okay. Any general comments from the board members? No? I'm going to open it to the public for this application. Anyone in the audience wishing to make a comment on this application, single-family house? Please come forward. Okay, if you're going to make some type of comment, we're going to swear you in and ask your name and address, okay? The attorney will swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before this board?
Yes,
You can put down your right hand. Please give your name and address.
it's Jerome, Jerome, Snexer, Snekser.
Address?
236 Schussler Street.
Where is that in relation to the property in question?
I'm about 3 houses down on the opposite side.
Opposite side, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've lived there all my life. I used to play in that area when I was a kid. There used to be 2 lots there, but they sold one off. My concern is, okay, we talk about air quality and we're removing all these trees that filter the air. And also there's a tree on that lot that has to be close to 100 years old now, because I used to play on it when I was a kid and I'm 72. So, plus all the nature that's there. And, you know, like we talk about, okay, now the coverage has to be 8,500 feet, but this is only 5,000 square feet. Why do we make these laws, change them if we're going to go back on them? You know, on a smaller area. Granted, my lot's 50 by 100, but that was done in 1950, you know, so.
Quick explanation is that's the size of that lot and it's sort of there's surrounding lots. So that's what the applicant is stating, is that they can't go
Yeah.
wider.
Like you were talking about sidewalks, like if you, okay, that would probably mean that the larger tree would have to come down. And I just can't see, you know, something that old and still alive, having to come down when, you know, it filters the air and all. Plus, there also is a postal box on that property. Where one of those green ones that they have there. I guess they put their overage there and then go back and forth. And they talk about drainage. Our street was supposed to get repaved and it got put off again. And our street floods all over the place. I mean, and we're not on the list for this year. So, you know, I mean, it might run off somewhere, but is it going to run off in front of somebody's house or up their driveway? You know, so there's things to be considered.
Okay, thank you. We'll consider them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bain, what about the mailbox?
We have no control over the US Postal Department. If they say they're going to keep the bucks there, it'll stay there.
Box is probably not on the property.
Probably in the right of way.
in the right of way.
Yeah. So, no problem.
So you can't touch it, you can't, you're gonna leave it there, right?
Exactly correct.
Yeah, okay. And anybody know about the 100-year-old tree? Is that where the house is gonna be? Or I guess it's the largest tree. Are they along the street or where the house will be?
I'm not I'm not a tree expert. 100 years a tree, that's kind of like.
Okay.
Not sure about that, but.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll save as many trees as we can. That's the only thing.
Yeah, one of the members looking on the map says the largest trees are along the street.
Along the street, yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to make any comments? Please come forward.
Hello.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before this board?
Yes.
Right hand, and give us your name, spell your last name, and right.
Jessica Dinklocker, Dinklocker. And I'm at 244 Schussler Street,
Where is that in relation to the property?
diagonal.
So across like both streets?
I'm on Schussler Street here, and the lot is here. Not directly across from me, but next door.
Across the intersection. Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, go ahead.
Okay, so I also, that tree is definitely over 100 years old, and it's straight, it's huge, and there's a lot of animals there. And where are they gonna go? And it's a forest, it's a functioning full forest, and it would be really awful to see it go. It's a big part of our view. Like when we're in our backyard, it's like one of the only trees left standing that we can see. It makes our view beautiful. Without it, it would just be house after house after house after house. And that's really all I got.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
As
you.
they said, they're gonna save the trees along the street, which are the larger ones. Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Last chance. Okay, the public portion on this application is closed. Any comments, final comments from board members on any testimony?
Just for the record, is that tree going to remain? Just so we,
I-
they said the center, I don't know if the center of the property or the center of the sidewalk.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, looking at an aerial or a photograph of the area, there's some wooden railroad ties that are shown up in this picture that are shown on the submitted plan. And it appears that the tree would have to come down, just kind of judging from the location of the photo and the location of where the house is going to be constructed. There are trees along that property line that would remain, but it appears that the larger one that's being referenced is kind of in the middle of the backyard area.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, if not, we heard the testimony and we heard the comments from the public. Can I have a motion on this application? Pro or against? Motion's been made to approve by Mr. Emma. Do we have a second? Okay, motion's been seconded to approve. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes?
Mr. Esposito.
No.
Mr. Emma. Mrs. Gottstein,
Yes.
Mr. Castle Grant.
Application has been approved. 4-1. That is an approval, right? Majority. Next application is 2312 Dish Wireless, Route 35.
Chairman, thank you. Richard Skolnick from my own law firm on behalf of the applicant, Dish Wireless. It's a pretty simple application. We are here for a use variance. Do we want to bring that member back?
Yes, he's back.
He's back. Got 6.
We have 6. Our board only has 7 members that have been appointed, and one of them obviously is not here tonight.
I trust the board will let me know if it has any significant problems with the application. I don't anticipate that,
Okay.
but I trust the board will let me know so that I can try to go ahead and move along with just the 6. So Chairman, you heard another application with a different lawyer about a year ago from Dish Wireless. It's a new entrant into the marketplace. Of course, you have Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, and now Dish is building out its national network. Its game plan essentially is to go on existing sites first before it starts building new towers, whether it's a rooftop or an existing cell tower. And buried into your package, we have some photos of the existing tower. So it's an existing tower. There's a couple of carriers on top already, you could see. And the proposal is to just add some antennas below the existing antenna. So they're not raising the height of the antenna at all. The antennas are going to go below. From a little distance, going to be pretty hard to make out from anywhere off site. And you have in your package a photo simulation. These simulations I only had a black and white, but then this is a simulation with the new antennas. Again, below all the other existing antennas. So in terms of building out wireless networks, this is really where you want to go to the extent you can on those existing structures. There's going to be some equipment at ground level inside the existing compound. Your review professionals have pointed out that the landscaping down there leaves a little bit to be desired, and we're certainly amenable to a condition of approval, counselor, to work with your staff, whoever you designate, to try to clean up. That tower's been there for a while. Maybe it hasn't been maintained, and we're Dish, we'll work with the tower company that owns it to try to spruce up and clean up that compound area, although it's down that road where you go into the boat dock area. I'm sure you know it much better. Chairman, we've just brought the civil engineer tonight if you need the testimony. It is a D variance because we're in the B3 and we're not permitted there. So I'm going to give some legal arguments on why we think it makes sense. Of course, you have the positive criteria for the D. You have to be particularly suited. And here we have an applicant that has its license to build out a network, and there's actually requirements from the federal government that they build it out. And we have an existing tower. So that goes to that particular suitability standard. This is we'll argue, a good site, a suitable site for a wireless carrier to go onto. And then in terms of your detriments, we don't see any on this site because nobody is going to know that a couple of additional antennas have been added. So whatever the fancy language is, we don't see any negatives, no detriment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance. Wireless has some special rules, so you have to balance the positives with the negatives, see if you can add any conditions, and then see if on whole there's a substantial detriment. So here you got a good site for a carrier that's building out its network. Makes sense. And they've designed their network around as many existing sites as they can. That's on the positive side. Suitability, we don't see any detriments. In terms of conditions of approval that can be added, your staff points out it could use a little spruce up in terms of the landscaping. We think that makes sense. We're agreeable to that. So on whole, we think that the positive criteria have been met. There's really nothing on the negative side. And then as a little kicker, The federal government has also said that you really can't deny this application. There's a special rule when you go on a tower to expedite the siting of wireless equipment that got passed by Congress, and it's been implemented. And more or less, it says that you shall approve this application, but we think it makes sense in any case for you to do so. Many towns don't require these co-locations when you go on an existing tower to come before the board. They do it administratively. I understand you have a practice where the applicant comes in front of you. That's no problem. But we are dealing, as I mentioned in my cover letter, with a federal statute and implementing regulations that don't really give you too much wiggle room on that. But again, we think the application makes sense. I got my engineer here from Oklahoma, but of course licensed in New Jersey, if you feel like you need him.
You gonna testify?
He can, but you tell me. I'm here. You can. I'm about to put him on. Let's get him
Put him on,
sworn in.
put him on to cover everything.
Sure.
Okay.
If I can have him sworn, counselor.
Take the microphone in hand. Raise your right hand.
Is it on?
Swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before this board.
I do so.
Okay. Please give your name, spell your last name.
My name is Peter Smith, Smith.
You're the engineer.
I am. I'm a civil engineer, structural engineer, licensed in New Jersey.
You testified at least a couple boards with me, right?
That's right. I've been accepted in front of this board last summer. Also East Amwell, I think in May, Springfield, Garwood, Chatham.
We were in Union together as well.
Union Township.
You're licensed in New Jersey and it's
Yes, sir.
current, and it's current.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. It's correct.
We'll accept your credentials. So just so we have a professional, tell us where it's located, the address and all that, and on the record.
Could you give a little outline? These are the plans, nothing new here. For these applications, the carriers are submitting are a little more like construction drawings than zoning drawings. We appreciate you bearing with us a little bit, but it'll give you an idea of what's going on here. Although we don't have every last detail of zoning drawing, but we did respond to the issues raised by your professionals.
Okay, and before you go, so what you presented before, is that in our packet?
That's the exact
So we don't have to mark it,
portion.
and we don't have to mark this either.
Your call,
If it was in the packet, we don't have to mark it.
but okay, but pull out the sheet, Peter, with the last revision date, so we can.
Okay.
confirm that.
This is the title sheet labeled T1, and the last revision date was 11/27 of 21.
Okay.
This
what do we
shows
got
this shows the site address of 1899 Highway 35. On the map, it's Mason Avenue. I went there today. It's pretty hard to find as Mason Avenue. Got to drive through a parking lot to get back in there. Adjacent boat storage and undeveloped land you can see on T1.
Is there an elevation difference between the highway and where this is located?
Significant elevation difference.
And it's lower?
It's much, much lower at the tower location. It
Okay,
is.
thank you.
Yeah, a lot of times I can locate these when I come to these towers, I can locate them for no other reason usually than looking at them. But this one was far back behind commercial property, back by this boat storage adjacent to, undeveloped land.
Sure the board is familiar with the area behind it.
Sheet A1 shows the siding plan. You can see in bold here on the bottom left of the sheet, the relatively small footprint in the existing compound of the new dish package. It's a very small compound compared to everything else. I mean, look how huge those existing shelters are. This
It's
is,
new technology, just around 35 square feet of equipment on the ground.
yeah. Yeah, and it just sits on the ground. There's not an installation of anything other than the utilities to and from the compound or the platform.
It's fenced? It's fenced,
It is existing fencing,
existing, you're within the existing fencing.
correct. The elevation shown on sheet A2, proposed south elevation of the tower. confirms what council said, that the installation is the lowest level of radio tower, of radio antennas on the tower.
Do you have a height?
Yeah, the height is 85 feet to the center of the installation.
Okay, 3 antennas.
Yeah, 3 antennas.
Just want to get
Correct.
everything on the record.
Yeah, absolutely. The antenna sizes and technology are listed there in the bottom right-hand corner. They're 5G antennas, if anyone's curious. We commonly get that question.
Okay, anything else?
I need one more hand. Next sheets are enlargements and blow-ups of the platform itself. 7 by 5 foot, as you can see at the upper left. And all the equipment needed is contained on there.
So the technology that Dish is using, a little more involved, a little smaller than the carriers over the last.
Oh, it's,
25
that's right. It's decades newer than some of the first compounds that probably went in on that site.
How was it anchored to the ground?
It sits on 4 pads that sit right on the ground.
Concrete pads?
No, I'm sorry. They're just equipment platform foot pads is what they're called. It's part of the platform itself. It's feet. It's feet with a flat plate on the bottom for, to help it bear.
Of course, we got to come in for the usual construction permits.
Maintenance, checking.
The typical once a month, the technician, you've probably heard this in other wireless applications over the years. Somebody comes out in the van about once a month to check, is that?
Correct. Correct.
Any lights for nighttime? Lighting?
That's a good question. I was out there during the day, so there was no lighting on. Typically, the older shelters have like a doorway light, but that's it. But I couldn't tell you whether those are functioning or not.
So that would be existing as what's there now?
No new lighting is proposed.
Okay, no new lighting, okay.
Sorry.
Generator?
I think Mr. Cornell rented a
He did,
plug-in.
yes. There's a plug-in so that one could be plugged in an emergency situation, but there's no permanent generator on the
Brought to
site.
the site if needed.
Correct. Only in emergency situations.
Is there the potential to add more antennas in the future?
Made a living off of that for a while, but I don't do it so much. I guess there's always the potential that they might want to come back. I'm sure they're planning, as far as they can.
What do you mean for Dish specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tower owner obviously changes antennas
Yeah.
on there. The other
That's
carriers do.
typical.
Yes.
It's quite typical in the industry that there's changes. I'm sure this is trying to avoid that because it's expensive to go in. But never say never because that's been over the 25 years plus of the industry. They're always changing and
Yeah.
equipment and that sort of thing. So not atypical, but that'll have to be used for zoning purposes. One of the reasons for that federal statute that I was discussing was that some towns, not many, but some were really putting the carriers through the ringer to just add a little bit of equipment. And the industry said, look, this is crazy. You want to make one little change, well, you got to go back to the zoning and everything. There's a balance of the zoning authority to regulate versus the needs of an industry to make changes and implement new technology without having wild approval process. So that's sort of the
And Dish has the added responsibility to the FCC of implementing the spectrum. They're on a timeline. So
That's just to get the antennas deployed and cover a
Correct.
certain part of the country. I think he was asking, are you gonna be back for a couple of antennas and hopefully not for a while.
yeah, they're busy building out. I don't know of them revisiting any of the sites that they've just put into service in the last
They gotta
18
try to
months.
Cover the country
That's right.
decently first. So I think.
They're at 72%.
This is to take care of a gap in coverage.
Yes, it is. Because they have many, many gaps. Because they're just starting out.
It's 5G.
Anything else? Just,
That's it, Chair.
Jay, John, any questions?
Oh, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, how about with your reports? Did they satisfy any questions on your reports?
I think through their testimony, Mr. Chairman, they answered the questions that were raised.
Yeah, the main thing was covered by Mr. Skolnick in the preamble about taking care of some of the landscaping upgrades because there was landscaping installed around the compound and most of it, I think it's fair to say is now dead. So just a matter of going in, taking out what were the old screening and putting in new plantings.
Yeah, that seemed to consist of two sides of the compound.
Correct.
Looked like had been planted some maybe decades ago and some of
Yeah.
it's alive and a lot of it's not.
Because really the other two sides are an undeveloped natural area and kind of naturally buffered and screened, but the two exposed sides had a row of arborvitaes or something that were planted and most of them are dead now.
So what are we going to ask for is we'll go back to the previous landscaping layout and ask for that.
I would ask they submit a simple plan sheet showing the landscaping to be removed and, if anything is viable to keep it and then fill in or just remove it all and start fresh depending on the circumstance. Just a general row of evergreens along the two sides of the compound.
Some of the evergreens are alive, a few of them, so maybe a remove and replace.
Yeah,
anything that's
yeah.
deceased.
If there's viable stuff, I wouldn't say remove it, but work with what you got.
So if we approve it, though, how are we going to kind of handle that?
Oftentimes the board approves things that are subject to conditions. Generally speaking, Jay's reports have a lot of technical things that need to be addressed anytime the board approves something. There's a process that we go through behind the scenes afterwards. Jay and I typically will review plans for resolution compliance where applicant has to submit a revised drawing or set of drawings that address any of the conditions that the board imposes. And then after they do that, they can proceed with the project.
Perhaps something like a landscape restoration plan, subject to the approval of board planner. Board planner can send it to board engineer, whoever you want to designate. We don't want to have to come back for that. Unless something outrageous comes up. I don't think so. I think, we're going to try to get the tower owner to do it because we're a tenant, really.
Okay, so that's what we'll do. You're proposing to do that as part of the application. Okay, fair. Very good. Any other questions from members? Anybody in the audience wish to make a comment on this dish antenna down in Morgan? Not seeing anybody. I'll close the public portion. Last comments? You're good to go?
My summation.
Okay. You're okay with the members that we have?
I trust they'll let me know if they have any major problems.
All right, so can I have a motion for this application? By Mr. Bellum, he made the motion to approve. Second? Dominic? We have a motion and a second to approve. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Mr. Emma.
Yes.
Mrs. Gottstein. Mr. Castle Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Bella.
Thank you for your time, Chairman. Do we have a likely date for memorialization?
August 23rd, our next
8/23, so I can
meeting.
tell the client.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Do you work with him as far as the memorialization?
I will send you a copy.
Sure.
Take a break.
Yep. Okay, well, before our next application, we'll have a no more than 5-minute break and you guys can set up. Thank you. Our attorney will discuss with you the memorialization as it's in progress.
These people will talk to my people.
Yeah, right.
I wish.
Okay, is everyone back in place? Thanks for your patience. We're back. Our next and final application is 2307, 103 Properties Limited, 117 Scott Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll use this mic, right?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your professionals. My name is David Himmelman, and I represent the applicant 103 Properties LLC. I want to make sure. And I know you're familiar with the application. I'm just going to give a brief opening, and then we can proceed with our witnesses, obviously, unless the board has any questions beforehand. As you know, the applicant seeks on redeveloping the property in question for office and warehouse use. The applicant is seeking preliminary and final site plan and use variance and bulk variance approval. And for the record, the property is identified as block 286, lots 198, 199, 200, 294, and 295. And of course, that's on the Borough of Sayreville tax map. And you know that it's identified as 117 Scott Avenue. The total lot area of the property is 12,500 square feet, or approximately 0.287 acres. The application has several elements to this. As you know, we seek to demolish the existing structures and buildings on the property and to construct a freestanding building with a footprint of 2,560 square feet and a total square footage of 5687. And as I indicated, for office and warehouse commercial uses on the property. As you know from the application and the site plan, the property abuts the borough's B3 Highway Business Zone District to the north. The property is in the residential zone, and as such, we need a D variance. The permitted uses, as you know, in the R7 are single-family homes, and therefore the D1 use variance relief is required under the municipal land use law. And of course, both your planner and your engineer identified that in their review memos. The applicant's planner, who you'll hear from later this evening, will testify and support the D1 variance, which, as you know, under the municipal land use law, conferred upon zoning boards powers in particular cases and for special reasons to grant a variance to allow departure from regulations to permit either a use or principal structure in a district restricted against such use or structure. As you know from prior applications, the applicant has the burden under the D1 use variance to provide sufficient proofs. What you know is both the positive and negative criteria, and the special reasons requirement of the under the municipal land use law is also referred to as the positive criteria. The special reasons, which courts have generally recognized to support the D1 use variance, include the following: that the use is inherently beneficial, that the site is particularly suited for the use, or that the use advances one or more purposes of planning as stated under the municipal land use law. The review standards, as you know, for the D1 use variances are set forth in the Medici case as to the special reasons to support the relief sought. As to the positive criteria, the special reasons to support that D1 variance, our planner will testify that the proposed project carries out the purposes of zoning as set forth under the municipal land use law. You're going to hear testimony this evening that the property, we believe, is particularly suited for the proposed office and warehouse use. Our planner will testify as to site suitability to support the D use variance, that given the abutting of non-residential uses within the B3 zone, the nature of the commercial uses within the area, and the existing landscape buffer, we believe the site is particularly suitable for the proposed use as it creates a less intense transition to the R7 zone. As to the negative criteria, you'll hear the applicant testify and provide proofs that the variance can be granted, we believe, without substantial detriment to the public good, and that there's no impact to the surrounding properties. Mr. Chairman, we have several witnesses tonight. Our first witness will be the applicant and owner of the property, Mr. Robert Egan, our engineer, Mark Lieber, who will testify on the overall site plan and proposed improvements. Our architect, Daniel Governal, will testify on the architectural features, the floor plan, the elevations, and the uses. And of course, then our planner, Vina Sawan, who will testify as to the justification for the use variance and the bulk variances sought. That's my opening, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for allowing me to make that presentation. If you or the board members don't have any questions, we can proceed with our first witness.
Okay, before that, can someone close the door because we're picking up some conversation?
You're hearing an echo, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
it's probably interfering with our online service. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bob? Mr. Chairman, our first witness is going to be Robert Egan, and I guess we would have to have him sworn in. And he's going to testify with regard to the factual aspects of the application and the uses.
Good evening, members of the board.
Please
Thank you
raise
for
your
having
right
us.
hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before this board?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Please give your name, spell your last name.
Robert Egan, E-G-A-N.
Thanks. Mr. President. Good evening, Mr. Egan. Just some preliminary background for the board and the public.
You get closer.
So
No,
you
hey,
are, I believe, the owner of the subject property. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that ownership is through the applicant 103 Properties LLC,
Yes.
and you are its managing member,
I am.
and you're authorized, obviously, to speak on this application, correct?
am.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
you can use that one and you can use that
Fair
one.
enough.
You don't have to be that close.
Can you just describe the nature of the application, the relief you're seeking, and particularly describing what you would like to do relative to your own business, and give a little background about that for the board's edification? Thank you.
Yeah, so I purchased the property a few years back, hoping to make it some office warehouse use. I have a HVAC company that's right across the street from it.
And that company name is?
Statewide Conditioning Incorporated. And planning on moving some of my services that we do over to this property if it's approved. And along with that, I would like to have the ability to possibly lease out a section of it, maybe to marketing company that needs some office and warehouse space, maybe a landscaper, electrical contractor, somebody who needs some additional space to store materials and have a small office.
And just so the board is clear, and it's professional, so you've described generally the type of office use you would lease the property to with some warehouse storage. Will the tenant's operations involve any type of manufacturing or any industrial uses?
No manufacturing, just light office, light warehouse type applications there. Nothing with heavy manufacturing or heavy industrial use or anything like that. Just typical office warehouse storage type, something similar to what I'm doing at Statewide.
Okay, and how long have you been in business statewide?
Been in business for 37 years.
Okay, and you're from the area, correct?
I am. I grew up in South Amboy.
Okay, great. All right. So in terms of the operations, I know the professionals asked for some information on hours of operation, the number of employees at the proposed businesses. So can you briefly review that for the
Yeah, so
board?
I assume the hours we're looking for like 7 a.m. to maybe 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. Some people may come in on the weekend, say 7 a.m. to 5, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't see any use on Sunday and probably minimal use on Saturday, but have the ability to do that. Employees that I'm looking to move over there, probably around 10 to 11 employees would be in the building any given time. I think that's about it.
Okay. And in terms of, traffic patterns, deliveries, garbage pickup. Can
Yeah,
you briefly
so-
describe that?
Yep, Laurel Avenue is a dead-end street, and we would enter in through Laurel Avenue and exit out through Scott Avenue, one-way traffic. Deliveries, the type of deliveries that I believe will be happening there is like Amazon, UPS, FedEx type deliveries, no big trucks, no tractor trailers. We have loading docks at the other, across the street at the other facility, that if any trucks did have to come in, they can certainly unload there. But for this property particularly, really just small deliveries that are going to happen there. The business that part of our business is basically an automation business. So basically doing programming and engineering type stuff and drawings and storing some materials for those projects. So no heavy, nothing big coming in or going out.
And how do you envision deliveries occurring and how often, how frequently?
The way I see it, probably 2 days, 2 to 3 days a week. We may have somebody, UPS come in or FedEx come in, typical delivery schedule. No deliveries on weekends.
Now, you've been at your current location for statewide for how long?
About 15 years.
Fair enough.
Yeah, at that facility.
And how is, in terms of the operation, have any of obviously you abut a commercial zone and you were in a residential zone for this property, but statewide across the street. Have there been any complaints about your business there? Or any of the neighbors approached you or anything?
No, not at all. We're pretty quiet down there. We don't make much noise. Sometimes I think people forget about us there.
Fair enough. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any direct questions further of Mr. Egan, but you or the board member or the board members or your professionals might. Thank you.
Okay. When you talk about warehousing materials, can you just be a little bit more specific?
Well, I would say for myself, like filter storage, that we may do. We may have electronic devices because it is a automation business. So controllers, that kind of stuff. But basically box stuff. I mean, I could wind up getting some products that we use on a daily basis that come in and out of there, but really just bulk storage. I picture like if a marketing company came in, they would store their marketing materials and things like that in there.
You're talking about like items like this or 20 feet long? Do you
Oh,
mean-
no, yeah, no, small, I would say 24 by 24 type boxes would be, the biggest stuff that would go in there, maybe 48 by 24. A lot of the stuff that comes in, and as far as with my business, the controllers, and I mean, they're small controllers, but they come in boxes, many of them in bigger boxes. So nothing, nothing oversized or
No
anything like that.
forklift.
No forklift. No, there's no need, wouldn't be, I don't see any need for that at this point. No, there wouldn't be. If anything had to be unloaded for like a Ford truck or anything like that, that would be taken next door. That delivery would be taken next door.
Any outside storage because of just the nature of what you're going to store?
No outside storage. We will have a dumpster on site. I think the trash pickup would be like once a week. That would be an enclosure. But other than that, I really don't have any plans to do any outside storage.
The closest house to your property is on Scott Street.
Scott Avenue, right now, there's a heavy tree line that's there now. We're planning on putting in some sort of a buffer there to help that. I believe the planner will talk about that. But yeah, there's a pretty good buffer there. And we set the house in where we set the building where the current house and garage is right now. And it's kind of more towards Laurel Avenue, towards all the commercial. And it's right up against Beacon's storage yard where they don't store all their dumpsters and everything. And then there's wetlands across from that. So really nothing would be in front of the building, even in the future, because it's all wetlands there, really unbuildable. I'm sorry?
Residential.
Yeah, it's a dead end. Yeah, you dead end and that's it. So, but where the building is facing, it's facing up Scott Avenue, say, but directly across where the building sits right now, it's basically just wetlands. So really unbuildable that would be there. So.
Between the property we're talking about and Main Street, what's going on there?
That would be Beacon Scrap Metal.
Okay, so there's like
Yeah, they.
heavy trucks.
Heavy trucks in and out all day long.
That's not you, right?
That is not me.
Okay. And how, and
No.
your existing building, is it like 200 feet away, a quarter mile away from the
You mean the one on, on?
Yours,
My
yeah.
current building?
Yeah.
It's right across the street on
Right.
Laurel,
Oh,
directly across the street.
from Laurel.
Yeah, so if
Yeah.
you, if you're walking, if you're on Scott Avenue and you walk through the property and you go to Laurel, you can see the statewide building.
You'd walk right into my building,
Right.
right into the building, the
Yeah.
adjacent building.
Is that your lot extend all the way to Main Street or is it?
It does.
Does, okay. All
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Any other questions?
So, Mr. Egan, you know, in Sayreville, warehouse is a dirty word these days, right?
Is what?
Is a dirty word, right?
Dirty word.
Warehouse, right? Because there's a
Okay.
lot of warehouses going up.
Right.
So I think concerns, one concern is, you say there's no big tractor trailers, of course, but your business, is it box truck? Like what kind of traffic or trucks will be going in and out to
For
pick
our-
up that
for our
material?
Our vehicles would be like, the biggest would be like a transit van for that
Okay.
area.
How many a day are we looking at for these residents?
Well, all the people typically take their vehicles home. They don't, they're
Okay.
dispatched from home. Very seldom do they come to the office as far as the, technicians that do the
Mhm.
work, but it's just office staff that'll be in there with their cars.
Okay.
Like I said, probably 10, 11 people.
Gotcha. Okay.
Again, yeah, I hear what you're saying about warehouse. It's not going to be a busy warehouse. It's
Yeah,
store,
right.
it's, if they're going to come in and pick up materials, it may be early in the morning, a couple days a week, and they're gone, so it's not in and out warehouse distribution,
Gotcha.
nothing like that. So I guess I used the word warehouse loosely on this one because it's really just storage. All right.
Understood.
So,
Okay.
All right, let me-
Thank you.
Mr. Egan, would you be willing, if the board were to act favorably upon the application, to restrict, and they wanted to restrict like tractor trailers or large delivery
yeah, I
vehicles
mean, I
coming
don't
in?
see any, that can definitely be written in there because just the access to go through there would be very difficult for a tractor trailer. Box truck would be able to get in, but tractor trailers aren't going through there.
Thank you.
This is something where it's just, on the plan, 3 big days. So it would just be for storage, like down the road, if somebody wanted to open up a RV.
No, I would, no, that's one thing that I would say, we would restrict that to automotive repair and things like that. Just strictly, what I said, office, storage, that kind of stuff. Wouldn't want any manufacturing, any sheet metal fabrication, nothing like that is going to take place there. Anything making noise won't take place.
And one of the things I wanted to point out is that when we had two TRC meetings with your professionals and Mr. Mashansky, and in addition to reducing the size of the building, one of the suggestions that came up out of that meeting was to try and come to the board with some suggested commercial uses so that should the board act favorably upon it, the resolution would have what Mr. Egan described, so there wouldn't be automotive repair or what I would consider commercial uses that are more intensive. Recognizing both your planner and your engineer and Mr. Mashansky said, they're sensitive to the fact that it abuts the residential zone. So if you can come to the board with the type of uses that Mr. Egan is referring to, it'll make it clearer, and then you guys can ask questions based on that. And that's what we did.
The building was reduced.
Right, the building was reduced.
Yeah, from our conversations.
Correct.
Did you mention landscaping before?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I think the planner, the site.
There is
Site engineer.
landscaping, and we're gonna.
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Landscaping businesses.
Oh, landscaping business. Oh, I'm sorry.
As a tenant.
I just kind of throwing that out there. Would that be an issue or?
Well, they probably have some outside storage, of vehicles and equipment. And I don't think,
I would think maybe if it was a landscaping company, that would be like they're storing their lawnmowers and things like that inside their tools maybe.
as long as it
But
was
they
inside.
can't, I would say that there's no outside storage. And if you had to write something into the resolution of no outside storage, I'd be happy with that. And I really wouldn't want the property itself to be looking like that either. So we keep a pretty clean shop. So.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions? Members or professionals?
I have one or two.
Sure.
So Mr. Egan, you said that you mentioned 10 or 11 employees at a time. Is that in addition to what you have going on at the operation across the street, or would some folks move?
No, some folks are going to move over.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that wouldn't be necessarily 10 new people.
Correct, correct. Yeah, I mean, there could be a couple of them eventually as, you know, as business
Yeah.
hopefully grows. You know, but right now, those people would be from the current location moving over. That division would move over to that site.
And those folks, do they typically park on your property today? Do they park along Laurel, a mix of them?
Some park in our parking lot, some do park along Laurel.
Okay.
And those
there's-
people would now park in the parking lot for the building.
But you have sufficient space for the
Yes.
employees
Yes.
today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And back to the question of auto repair, I would just say, and you know, Andy can cross that bridge if and when it come to it. I would say from a planning and zoning perspective, that would be a totally different use that would require an application to come back to the board to permit that.
Fair enough.
That's outside of the bounds of a simple office, warehouse, flex space kind of use that we're looking at here.
I would agree. No, he was indicating that automotive repair
Oh, yeah,
would be a different type of use and would require a separate application, and I agree with him.
As an owner of the property, I wouldn't want that there anyway, just from an EPA and all that and, you know, so.
Last chance, any questions of this witness?
He's not going anywhere,
Okay.
so he's always here. Great.
Right.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Reed.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Mark. Mr. Chairman, our next witness is Mark Lieber, who's our project engineer. So we would have to have him sworn in and then we could qualify Mr. Lieber.
You want to take this one?
Yeah.
Hi, good evening.
Please raise your right hand. Yep. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before the board?
Yes, I do.
And please, your first name and spell your last.
Sure. Good evening. It's Mark with a C. My last name is Lieber, L-E-B-E-R. I'm a principal engineer at East Point Engineering. Our office is in Marlboro, right on Route 79. I've testified before both boards in Sayreville. I'll give you a brief history of my background. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering from Drexel University. Following graduation, I returned to school in the evenings and completed the Rutgers part-time MBA program in Newark and was licensed in 2003 as a professional engineer, in 2005 as a planner, and in 2006, I completed the Certified Municipal Engineering Certificate program. Since then, I've worked on both the private and public sector sides of this business, testifying at boards such as this one, as well as working for municipalities and solving the various problems that they frequently have.
Your license in New Jersey
Yes,
and it's current?
it is.
Okay, we'll deem you as qualified.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lieber, did you bring any exhibits that we need to at least mark and distribute?
I did.
Okay, if you would just describe that and then we could mark it, I guess, Mr. Krenzel, A1.
All right. So A1 is going to be a set of color photographs with an aerial map. And then A2 is just going to be drawing sheet 3 of the site plan set with some color on it. That's A2. It's drawing sheet 3 of the plan set.
But it's just
Revised.
colored.
Yeah,
That's what-
revised through May 4th with some color. 1, 2.
John, if that does. Sure. Mr. Lieber, so we've marked A1 and A2, correct?
Yes.
Are you going, you're not going to need any easel because you're going to rely on on A2 to testify from the site plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right. If you would just give us an overview of the proposed project obviously describing the nature of the application, including the overall site plan, layout, parking, landscaping, the relief that we're seeking, and then we can obviously address this comments in any of the professionals' reports. Thank you.
So again, I'll give you a little bit of background. It's block 286, and the lots are 198, 199, 200, 294, and 295. The total lot area is 12,500 square feet. And this is actually considered a through lot. In other words, it's a lot that has frontage on two separate streets, but is not on a corner. In this case, the street address is 117 Scott Avenue, but we have 50 feet of frontage along Scott Avenue, and we also have 75 feet of frontage along Laurel Street. As you heard earlier, Laurel Street is a dead-end street on the property, and the street ends just around the end of our property. Right now, there's three structures on the property. There's a building that was formerly used for a single-family dwelling, and then there's two detached garage structures as well. Surrounding this property are a couple of different uses. Most notably, if you're on Scott Avenue and you look immediately to our right, that's Beacon Metal. They store a variety of dumpsters and tractor trailers on the property there. Across Laurel Avenue is a commercial building. You heard a moment ago, that's also owned by the applicant. To the left of the property on Scott Avenue, there's a lot that's 100 feet wide. It's vacant in the residential zone. Beyond that lot, there's another lot that's 100 feet wide that has a single family dwelling on it. And then across Scott Avenue, you have both the recycling center and some single family dwellings that are further down the street. This property is zoned R7. That's a residential zone. And while there are some existing nonconformities with regards to the structures that presently exist on the property, I do want to note that all of those structures are going to be removed. So those nonconformities are going to go away. So prior to starting the project, the first thing we did is we had a survey done. Noticing through doing some research and field reconnaissance that appeared there was freshwater wetlands right along this property. So the next step was we had a wetland delineation done in the field where the wetland limits were flagged and added to our property survey so we could determine where those flags fell in relation to what we were doing. Now, if you look at sheet 2 of the plan set, you'll notice in blue the wetland line. It's also labeled freshwater wetlands line. And you could also see it on exhibit A2 as well. And you'll notice that there's a transition area, which is also known as a buffer of 50 feet.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Are you going to hand that out also? We only,
You could use A2. It's the blue line on A2.
okay.
So you'll notice that 50-foot wetland buffer, which has a red label on it, it's a blue line, does come into this property. So before we started any design work, we made an application to the NJDEP for two things. One was a freshwater wetlands letter of interpretation, and the second was a wetlands permit to perform work within a regulated area. It did take a couple of years to get these permits, and the DEP finally granted them on November 3rd, 2022. Now, having said that, there was a lot of thought into how this property was laid out. If you're looking at A2, you'll notice I colored in Laurel Street in gray, and you'll see that it ends almost at the edge of this property. Frankly, that's a municipally owned road, and it cannot be extended any further due to the wetlands restrictions that are crossing that right away. The next thing we were trying to do is to place a building on the property in a manner that was least intrusive to the surrounding lots. So first and foremost, we want to keep the building as far north, which on this plan is to the right, and as close to the Beacon Metal property as possible. We also are removing one of the garage structures that's actually on the far south side of this property, which is immediately adjacent to our neighbor on Scott Avenue. And that structure was more or less right on the property line. Now, after that, we wanted to design a structure that was more or less residential in character. It didn't look more industrial in nature. So one of the benefits of working with the architecture that you'll see in a moment is that the building height is 35 feet, which does comply with the zone, but it enables to completely block and obscure the view of the Beacon Metal property and the activities that are going on there. A couple moments ago, we were discussing, the first floor warehouse, so to say, which really is another term for a storage area. And that was specific to this design for this property because one of our additional constraints, aside from the wetlands, is we're located in a flood hazard area. So we really didn't want to have any sort of a commercial office use on the first floor that could be potentially damaged on a flooding event. So it's intentional that the first floor of this building is more or less open for storage. And when we initially filed the plan, we met with the board's professionals. They provided some feedback as to some modifications. We had scaled the building back. We provided some additional parking as well as a standalone trash enclosure on the property. Now, I do want to go to A1 and just walk through a couple of photos that were taken this week showing you the existing conditions. So on the first page, you have this aerial map.
Excuse me, Mr. Lieber.
Did you get this?
We didn't get A1.
Didn't get that one.
Oh. Yeah,
No, the board did not receive A1.
it was just handed out? No?
Yeah, I think we missed that.
Oh. There's two more.
Oh. Yeah, John, one more.
I think we got enough. Okay, so A1 again, the first page, you have the aerial photo. In the center of this photo, there's a little red circle. That's the property that we're discussing. If you look immediately above the property, that's the Beacon Metal where they store their trucks and dumpsters. To the left, you'll see a note statewide conditioning. That's a commercial building on Laurel Street. You could actually see where Laurel Street ends in this photo. Go across Scott Avenue. Frankly, that's a industrial commercial use. I don't know, some kind of recycling going on there. It's not very well kept. Across Main Street, you have Beacon's main yard. There's heaps of metal across Main Street. And then going south on Scott Avenue, which is below the red circle, you'll see one area that's a vacant lot. And then beyond that, you'll see a house with a brown roof. From that point down Scott Avenue, those are all single-family dwellings. The green area that's behind the property is freshwater wetlands, and that wetland area continues out to Oak Street. Now, if you go to the second page, the photo on the top is a view of the building front. Again, the street address is 117 Scott, but this is actually a photo taken from Laurel. It's the front of that former dwelling. You'll see right to the left of the dwelling, you'll see one of Beacon's dumpsters. If you go to the bottom photo, this is the rear of the dwelling. On the left, you'll see Statewide's building across Laurel. That's on the left. And then on the right of the house, you'll see, again, Beacon's dumpster. And then there's just a clip on the right side of one of the garages that's out there that's going to be demolished. Go to the next page. This is Laurel Avenue. In the distance, you could see where the woods are. That's all wetlands. That's where the street ends. And on the right, you see Statewide's building. And then the next photo is just really walking to the end of the street, showing where that house is located to give you an idea of how much frontage is left on the remaining portion of the street. So the next page, I'm going to go over to Scott Avenue. This photo I took looking into the property from Scott Avenue. Recent improvements included all new paving on the street, concrete aprons and sidewalks and curb. In the distance here, you'll see another freestanding garage that's going to be demolished as well. And then to the left, there's a bunch of greenery that's actually not on this property. That's actually on the lot to our left. So the bottom photo, I basically wanted to show you what that looks like. So I'm turning more to looking down Scott Avenue. You'll see right in the center of the photo near the speed limit sign, there's a brown fence. That's a 100-foot lot that's presently vacant, in the R7 zone. And then next to that on the left is a single-family dwelling. All the greenery that you see between that brown fence and our property where the white car is actually on the neighbor's lot. The last page, this is taken at the very end of Laurel Avenue. Again, you see the back of the garage that's going to be demolished. You see a large green area. This is right on the property line. And then the bottom photo, this is where Beacon stores their trucks. And you see the house that's on the left, that's the house that's part of this application. And the reason I took this photo is because I wanted to emphasize this is the view that we're trying to obscure by placement of the building that's shown on our plans. This way, we would be blocking these red containers. So that brings me to A2 again, which is really the layout. You have in red here the proposed building. It's 2,560 square foot footprint. As you heard earlier, it could be occupied by more than one tenant. We're providing off-street parking here. There's 9 spaces in the new lot, which is below the building on this plan. And then we have 2 paved parking spaces right off of Laurel Street at the top. The access is one way. How you get in here is you come down Laurel Street and you could turn into the property. And then there's a one-way access out onto Scott Avenue. As you heard earlier, there will not be any tractor trailers. Property is frankly not designed to accommodate truck traffic as it's not expected anyway. There is a trash enclosure. It's on the south side. It's colored in beige here. And we also had provided a landscaping and a lighting plan as part of the project. Now, understandably, this lot is very narrow. It's 50 feet on Scott Avenue and 75 feet on Laurel Street. It's shaped like an L, which does present some challenges in design. So there are a couple of variances that are requested. First and foremost, the minimum lot width requirement in the zone is 75 feet. And on Scott Avenue, we only have 50 feet. That's an existing condition. The side yard setback requirements are 8-foot minimum and one side 20-foot combined. Our building is set back 5 feet to Beacon Metals lot. So we're 3-foot deficient. We would need a variance, but we do meet the combined 40-foot side yard, so that's not an issue. Additionally, there's a requirement that our parking lot, meaning our drive aisle off of Scott Avenue, be 5 feet from the adjacent lot line. We're only 4 feet, and we did request relief from that. There's a requirement for a 50-foot wide buffer, a landscape buffer, when you have a commercial use adjacent to a residential use or zone. And we do need relief from that because frankly, a 50-foot wide landscape buffer on this property would invalidate any potential development plan entirely. And then lastly, the building coverage limitation, we're permitted 20%. As shown here, we're asking for 20.5%. And overall lot coverage is R7 zone allows 45%. The property today has just over 62%, and we're asking for 77.2%. So we are over on lot coverage. Other than that, we do propose to have public water and public sewer to this building. The design of the building, including the installation of utilities, et cetera, as well as air conditioners, will be elevated such that it complies with the Flood Hazard Control Act. Are there any questions so far? Okay. That being said, I want to talk about the review reports that we received. Mr. Cornell has a report dated July 26th on the project. And the first page is really a recap of the testimony I just provided as to what we're proposing. And then he goes into some technical review comments regarding the layout and the design of the site. Some of these items are testimony items, for example, the aesthetics of the building, which you'll hear from the architect in a couple of moments. There's a comment here about off-street loading berths, which we would request relief as we don't feel that an off-street loading berth is required for this use. There is a waiver requested from extending Laurel Street all the way to the end of the property, which might be customary with an application on an unimproved street. Unfortunately, there's no permit available from the NJDEP that would allow that to occur, so we're asking for relief. Deed of consolidation, we have no objection to that. And then he goes into some water distribution comments, which we do not have any issues with. Item C1, we're requesting a waiver for street trees along Laurel Street. We did provide a landscape plan, which was sheet 5 of our set. On that sheet, what we were proposing were some trees to fill in the portion of the wetlands buffer that's not vegetated presently. So we showed a mix of deciduous trees and evergreen trees in that corner to kind of restore that area to a natural state. But frankly, there is no space for a street tree in front of the property on Laurel Street. But one thing I did want to mention is that there does appear to be adequate right-of-way along Laurel Street if you wanted street trees installed within the borough right-of-way. That's something that we could do. As far as the lighting levels, we did show on our lighting plan that there was perhaps 0.2 or 0.1 foot candles spillover of our new lights. And I do want to mention that those models that we create do not take into account any obstructions such as vegetation or fencing. We could add those obstructions into the model, which I'm confident will reduce those levels to 0. Item 3, we are requesting relief that 20% of the site consists of landscaping and that 5% is located along right-of-way areas. We have an extremely small width along these right-of-ways, and there just isn't enough space to provide 20% of landscaping. I was able to fit a tree along Scott Avenue, but if you look at your plan, I have 50 feet of frontage and a 25-foot wide driveway. So I only have 25 feet to plant, so I could really only fit one shade tree. Similar with number 4, with the 10% requirement for parking area landscaping, we provided a screen of shrubs that are along the parking lot in between us and the Beacon Metal site. But unfortunately, the square footage of the shrubs doesn't meet the 10% requirement. So we're asking for a relief. We talked about the 50-foot wide buffer. And as far as the remaining items in the letter, you know, Mr. Egan had addressed through the testimony about the hours operation, the employees and traffic, and deliveries, et cetera, pick up and drop off from the site. The next item I want to point out is there's a code requirement for a 30-foot width driveway for a non-residential use. On Laurel Street, we have a 22-foot wide driveway, and the standard in engineering is that for a driveway that has parking on either side, the minimum would be 25 feet to allow for a vehicle to back out of a space without any obstructions. Here, we have a 22-foot wide driveway, which is just for pass-through for a car to get in and pass another car. So I feel that the 30-foot width is not required for this type of a use. The driveway setback requirement is 10 feet to the property line. That's a design standard. And we are requesting relief for one side of our driveway, which is to the south. Item 5, access to the building through the 22-foot wide driveway. I don't see any issue with that. The architect's going to explain the overhead doors in a moment. The primary use of the doors is not to pull vehicles into the building. And if there were vehicles being pulled into the building, they would be more or less no larger than a pickup truck, which can safely navigate in and out of these doors because they're extra wide with that 22-foot width. Concrete curb detail, we could revise to meet the borough standards, and that was the last comment in the letter. There is another memorandum from the board planner dated July 21st. Frankly, many of these items are testimony, but I do want to jump to Mr. Barry, ask if he has any questions, because a lot of the planning items are going to be addressed by Ms. Swan, who's our planner tonight, but I don't want to skip over anything that needs to be addressed right now.
Sure, just I think I had 2. So there was a mention that some enhanced buffering would be provided along the property line closest to the residential. I don't know what side of the plan that is.
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
the south side. Yeah. Could you just provide some general testimony about what you anticipate there?
I mean, at this point, our plan showed a 12-inch high landscape wall, similar to one you could purchase at a home improvement store, just modular blocks. And the reason for that is because our parking lot is 12 inches higher than the grade next door. So right now we have a 12-inch high landscape wall with some grass or ground cover. We could supplement that. There is a fence next to our property. That's not our fence, however. So if the board felt it more appropriate to have a fence on that side, that's doable. We can't fence in the wetlands, however, but when we laid out the property, we had thought about things like headlights, and then we intentionally kept our parking facing north so that any headlights would be shining into the Beacon property and not to the south.
Do you happen to know how tall that fence is? Just at a,
On the neighbor's property,
yeah.
I believe it's a 6-foot fence.
Depicted on one of the photographs in A2 or A1? rather?
It's not, because it's so overgrown there that it doesn't come through in the picture. Well, the brown fence goes facing Scott Avenue, but then it turns up the side. So there's eight lots, each 25 feet wide on Scott Avenue. The first 4 lots, which is 100 feet, that has the house, that's owned by the same person that owns the next 4 lots, the next 100 feet. Yes.
Okay, so if we're looking at the 4th page of A1, that shows the existing conditions with the fence and the vegetation along the south side of the property line.
You're referring to the bottom photo?
Well, yeah, I guess both of them, but more specifically the bottom one, you can see the fence.
Correct.
Okay. So I then just leave it up to the board. There's a lot going on there today. So I don't know how much any buffering within the 4 or 5 foot wide space on the applicant's property would make a difference, but that's the existing condition. And then the other question I had was comment number 10 in my report on page 6 or 11 rather, about the provision of electric vehicle charging equipment in compliance with the state model ordinance.
Yes, we are going to provide a EV spot. In fact, the applicant owns an EV vehicle, so it's to his benefit to have that spot, so we agree to comply.
Okay, great. And I believe that's all. Thank you.
You explain the house that's next to your property and the vacant lot and who owns it again?
Sure. according to the tax record, it's owned by, just want to make sure I have the name proper.
We don't need the name. just-
Vrabel, am I pronouncing that right?
I don't know, but just,
Okay. So, like I said, he owns 8 25-foot wide lots. So there's one lot that's 100 feet wide, and then there's another lot that's 100 feet wide. One of them has a house in it, and one of them does not.
the one that doesn't is in between the house and your property.
Exactly.
So that's like one ownership there.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, any further questions of Mr. Lieber? Or he's not going anywhere, but
Yeah, I'll be here.
Questions?
What does the yellow represent over here on A2? Adjacent to the parking spaces?
You mean
The
like
yellow color, yeah.
the green shading?
Yes.
That was just to emphasize that that's part of the property that's not owned by the applicant.
It's not on.
Right, so there's a red line that goes along the property line. And then everything outside that red line, I just kind of shaded in that greenish yellow
Okay,
to show that that's really not part of this.
thank you.
Alrighty.
Go to the right. They're Beacon Metal, that's Beacon Metal's property, even though they're going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, when you look at A2, they own everything between my coloring to Maine, which includes, there's a 25-foot wide lot that looks like it would square off our property. They own that one too.
thank you, Mr. Lieber.
Thank you.
Sorry, are
Oh, I'm sorry. One more question? Mr. Chairman?
Beacon Metal using that property?
Unfortunately, they are. We actually asked them and they were not at all interested in selling that.
Okay, both parcels, the one that squares it off and the other one that's colored?
I only know about the squaring off one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, our next witness is our architect, Dan Governal, and he's going to have to be obviously sworn in and qualified, and he will testify on the proposed architectural features, the design, the floor plan, elevations, materials, et cetera. So we'll give Mr. Krenzel a minute.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before this board?
I do.
And please give your first name and spell your last.
Daniel Governelli, Governalle.
Very good. Mr. Governal, can you just give a brief overview of your CV and your expert qualifications in architecture and your status of your license? And I know you've testified before numerous boards. Thank you.
So Daniel Governelli, principal architect at Barlow, Governelli and Associates. I have a Barlow, Governelli and Associates. Have a bachelor's of science at NJIT. My license is current in the state of New Jersey. And yes, I've testified in front of many boards.
And that's licensed as an architect, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we would offer him as an expert in architecture. Thank you.
We'll qualify him as an architect.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan, have you brought any exhibits that you'd like to hand out which differ from the plans we filed with the board?
Yes.
Okay, so you want to describe them and then we can mark them. I guess that would be A3.
So these are revised architectural plans indicating modified signage on the building. So
Fine, well, we can hand those. Joan, do you want to? Great. And have you brought any other exhibits that you're going to want to testify from?
yes.
Okay, and you want to, is that?
Color rendering.
Is that a color rendering of what was submitted and no difference, correct?
Correct, but it's a color rendering of the building elevation.
All right, well, why don't we mark that also? We'll mark it A4, I believe. You want to initial that maybe and just date it?
Do we have an easel in the back room? You want an easel?
Yeah, could we? That would be great.
Yes.
It's the same It's similar, but it's colored, and I think the signage location is somewhat different, but Dan, you can explain that. Oh, the handout.
Yes.
Yeah, that's different than what was submitted. Yes, correct. I apologize. Great, Joan. Thank you so much. Okay. You want the mic, Dan? Or
Either way.
okay. All right. So I guess you're going to initially testify from what's been marked as A4. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Okay, before you go, can you position it so everybody can see it?
Fair enough.
And then you can hold the portable microphone and stand over there.
Oh, fine.
Can you,
Architects come prepared.
you listen to this young lady?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Does that work?
Okay. So this image is the south-facing elevation of the building as shown on the architectural design drawings. What we would like to point out in this is the usage of materials and the aesthetic of the building, the overall appearance, and the architectural direction that we've chosen for the building. So we have the lower level of the building, as the engineer had described, is our area of storage and generally encapsulating our space, which is located below the flood hazard plain. Upstairs is the office areas where they have access through a staircase on the interior to get up to the second floor. And we've tried to create a architecture that is varying in color, varying in texture, but maintaining a residential character that is suitable for the area which it's located. So we have an asphalt shingle roof. We have a band of white, like a board and batten type aesthetic. We have vertical vinyl siding on the base of the building, and we have horizontal clapboard on the top of the building. There's also a bit of stepping in the roof lines. So on the Laurel Avenue side of the building, it actually turns at a angle, and that receives the driveway coming in off of the street. And then on the Scott Avenue side, there's actually a stepped roof there. So the elevation, when you look at it from Scott Avenue, is not just one vertical wall surface. It actually steps back at the second floor and creates a little relief above the first floor space. So one of the things that we did modify prior to presenting our plan tonight was the signage that was originally shown was a 2 foot by 4 foot or 2 foot by 8 foot sign on the original application. We've reduced that on this elevation to an 8 square foot sign that's 2 feet by 4 feet. And on the other side of the building, which is shown in the revised architecturals facing Laurel Avenue, we have a 2 foot by 8 foot sign for a total of 16 square feet. The little platform on the right side here, that indicates a required deck that we have to access the electric meter. And we also have the HVAC equipment located above the flood hazard area. So looking at the architectural design drawings, we have the building footprint that was described, 2,560 square feet as our footprint. The total building area square footage is 5,878 square feet and containing space on the ground floor as storage and on the elevated floor as offices. There's also a middle level called our mezzanine, which is this plan right here. And in the flood zone, we can't have toilet rooms. We can't have anything other than interior access, storage, and parking by rules of flood hazard. So that mezzanine level is providing us with toilets for the ground floor and also for toilets on the office floor, because you're permitted to traverse one story to access plumbing fixtures. And that would also have additional storage available as well on that floor. There is no plan for offices on that mezzanine level. So the offices are located on the second floor, and we're showing an open office area that occupies the entire uppermost floor. Architecturally, the elevations, as I was describing, we have the one sign on Laurel Avenue centered on that facade. So you would only see that sign from Laurel Avenue upon approach to the building. And once you're on site, then you're crossing across the south facade and heading into the parking areas as you get closer to Scott Avenue. So generally, that's the architectural design and some of the main points of the architecture.
Dan, can I just ask you a couple of questions of just going through the planner's, I guess, memorandum of July 21, John Barry. So with the signage detail, I know we've reduced the amount of signs from 3 to 2, correct?
Yes.
But technically, we're still in a variance, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Also, just to clarify, your architectural plans that were, I believe, revised May 25th, 2023, is that correct? Is that the revision date?
Yes.
Okay, I believe, Mr. Barry, I think we did submit those. Your comment was, I guess you were a little confused because the original preparation date was February, and we just wanted to confirm that the May 25th plans, the hard copies, were delivered to the board. I believe they were. Okay. Joan, I think we have those architectural plans dated May 25th, I believe. Just wanted to clarify that because I think, Dan, your office had updated those plans, correct?
Yes.
All right, well, you can check on that. In just going through the professionals memorandums, I believe you've covered all of the comments regarding architecture in John, your memorandum. Is there anything else that we didn't cover?
I would just request some testimony about the flood proofing to the extent that there's going to be flood proofing on the ground floor. There'll be flood vents. How are you treating? Because none of that was shown on the design.
You talk about the flood vents?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a new building. It will be constructed to the standards and codes that are imposed on this site. We are in a coastal AE zone, and the building has to be built to those standards.
So the flood elevation is what again?
Base flood elevation is elevation 15.
Fair enough.
The grade is
9.3.
Okay, so significant volume of the ground floor. Is the building being wet flood proof, dry flood proofed?
So since it's in a coastal AE zone, dry flood proofing is not an option. So we have to utilize breakaway walls and flood vents, both to comply with ASCE 24 and various other ASCE 24 and various other code and standards.
Okay, so all of those details will be provided at time of building permit application.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
On our plan, you can actually see we do have columns shown, and that's in preparation of having an open type foundation with breakaway wall infill in between those columns.
Thank you, Dan. Just referring to Mr. Cornell's memorandum, also dated July 26th. I'm just reviewing that. I know Mr. Lieber covered I think, most of the items, but I don't, Mr. Cornell, did you want to ask any follow-up questions with regard to your memo on, or for our architect?
Chairman, I think the comment only was the aesthetics. We just wanted a presentation
Right.
with the colored rendering, which you did.
I
Thank
saw
you.
that. Okay, very good. Mr. Chairman, do you or any of the board members have any other questions for Mr. Carbonali?
Okay. It was mentioned that there might be other businesses coming in here. It would be using the office space. How are they going to enter into the same door? How is that going to be separated?
So the building design would allow for multi-tenant because you would be able to come up the same common stair area and then have an open office area. So nothing in terms of the layout, the exterior, the appearance would change if the building were utilized by two separate tenants.
You could separate them and they'll have to undo a lock to get into their space and the other tenant will have to, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Chairman? Board members or professionals? Great. Okay.
Okay.
Dan, thank you. Don't go anywhere, but
Leave that up.
yeah, you can leave it up. It's fine. Mr. Chairman, our next witness is our professional planner and Venus Sawan, who's going to testify on the D variance relief sought and the justifications and proofs for that, as well as the C variances. And we would have to have her obviously sworn in and qualified. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before the board?
Yes, I do.
First name and spell your last.
Veena, Veena, last name Sawant, Sawant.
Very good. If we would just give a brief overview of your qualifications and your licenses and your CV, so we can ask the board to qualify you as an expert in professional planning. Thank you.
Sure. I'm a professional planner licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm certified nationally by the American Institute of Certified Planners. I hold a bachelor's degree in architecture from Mumbai University and a dual master's in urban planning and policy making from NYU. I currently serve as the planning director of your neighbor town, Old Bridge Township. I have I have testified before various other municipalities in Essex, Middlesex, Sussex, Bergen, Monmouth.
We'll qualify you as a planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Veena, if you would just walk us through your testimony, obviously describing the relief sought and the justification. Do you have any exhibits that you want to bring?
No, I don't.
I didn't think so. Okay. So I will allow you to proceed with the variance justification, and then we can address any other comments. Thank you.
Sure. I'll just give you a brief overview of the property. The subject property consists of 5 parcels and has a total area of 12,500 square feet. The property is a through lot with a lot frontage of 50 feet along Scott Avenue and 75 feet along Laurel Street. There is currently a residential dwelling and 2 detached garages located on the property, which are proposed to be demolished. The property is located fully within the R7 residential district of the borough, where, thank you so much. No problem. Where warehouses and office uses are not permitted. The subject property abuts the B3 Highway Business Zone District to the north. The applicant is requesting tonight a D1 use variance and a couple of C variances to use the subject property for warehousing and office use. First, it's D1 use variance. The R7 single family residential zone does not permit warehouse storage and office use, and hence a D1 use variance is required. Bulk variances, there is a bulk variance required for lot width. 75 feet is required, and the property has 50 feet of lot frontage on Scott Avenue. a single side yard setback of 8 feet is required and a combined side yard of 20 feet is required. The proposed building has a single side yard of 5 feet. The borough's ordinance allows 20% building coverage, where the applicant proposes a building coverage of 20.5%, which is de minimis in nature, but a variance is required. The ordinance requires 45% impervious coverage in the R7 zone, where the applicant proposes an impervious coverage of 77.2. The existing site has an impervious coverage of 62%. Insufficient loading space, a minimum 1 space is required for the first 25,000 square feet of gross building area. We provide none, and I can testify to that. A signage variance is required for the number of signs and the size, because the R7 zone allows one wall sign to be restricted to 8 square feet, where one of the proposed sign is 16 square feet. I'll get straight into the use variance. This use, the proposed use, is not an inherently beneficial use. There are certain proofs that are required for a use variance, and I will get into those now. The subject property is located within the R7 district and contains a single family home with 2 accessory structures. The subject property, although located in the residential zone, directly abuts B3 Highway Business Zone to the north. The properties across the street along Scott Avenue and Laurel Street also lie within the B3 zone and contain non-residential uses. To the south, beyond the B3 zone and along Scott Avenue, there are single-family homes on either side of Scott Avenue, all of which are located in the R7 zone. The proposed use, although not consistent with the zoning ordinance, is consistent with the adjoining land uses on all 3 sides. The property has access along Laurel Street, which is a dead-end street and terminates at the subject property. Laurel Street is used by vehicles maneuvering in and out of the property located at 6200 Main Street. The existing building on this property is occupied by Statewide Conditioning, Inc., and the building has 2 garage doors facing Laurel Street. The loading activity for this business occurs in that area that directly faces the subject property. An auto recycling facility is located within the southeast quadrant of the intersection of Scott Avenue and Main Street. A recycling center is located within the northeast and the southeast quadrant of the intersection of Main Street and Scott Avenue. One of the recycling center properties directly abuts the subject property to the north, with surrounding properties containing a commercial use, recycling center, and a scrapyard. The subject property is not conducive to a single family home. If a home was to be built at this location, it would be completely out of character, especially as there are no other homes on Laurel Street. The neighboring property located at 109 Scott Avenue, which abuts the subject property to the south, is developed with a single family home. There are 4 vacant lots between the property containing the home at 109 Scott Avenue, which may be developed with a single family home. Given the abutting non-residential uses on 3 sides, the nature of commercial uses within the area, we believe that the site is particularly suitable for the proposed use as it creates a less intense transition to the R7 zone. The applicant has agreed that the building will not be used for manufacturing use. Compared to the surrounding non-residential uses, the proposed use will be the most benign and least intrusive non-residential use and will not have any negative impacts. The site would suffer if developed for residential use, as it is adjacent to a heavy industrial use area. To further establish site suitability and provide special reasons, it is also critical to prove to the board that the subject property cannot be developed with uses that are currently permitted in the zone. I would rephrase that. They can be developed, but it would be harder to develop them with the uses that are permitted in the zone, or how the proposed use is better suited for the site compared to what is permitted by the zone. The subject property and the area to to its north lies within the special flood hazard area, Zone AE, that requires a base flood elevation of 15 feet. For properties that lie within AE zone, the regulations require a habitable floor area or living space to be at a base flood elevation of 15 and design flood elevation of 16 feet. Although it's not impossible to construct such a home, such residents are different in scale and architecture, which would be inconsistent with the current character of the nearby residentially developed parcels. The majority of the residential properties to the south of the subject property lie outside the flood hazard area. Few homes that lie within the other flood hazard area are non-compliant, as none of the homes have habitable space that is elevated or at the required base flood elevation or design flood elevation. These homes probably were constructed prior to the flood hazard regulations being implemented and therefore have a different architectural style. The subject property is an oversized lot and could be potentially subdivided to create two residential lots, one fronting on Scott Avenue and other on Lawrence Street. And I believe that was one of the questions that was discussed at the TRC meeting. As mentioned earlier in my testimony, a residence along Laurel Street would be completely out of character and inconsistent with the surrounding land use, and in effect would be a residential island isolated from other residentially developed parcels. Despite this inconsistency, if homes were to be built on the subject property, the such structures would have to comply with the aforementioned regulations. As previously stated, these homes would have to comply with the flood regulations, which would not be in character with the housing stock that currently exists. The site is specifically designed so that there are less negative impacts to the neighborhood. I think Mr. Lieber had explained in detail that the site was so designed that the building is placed closer to the non-residential uses rather than to the residential uses. The parking lot is what really separates, but as of now, you can directly see Beacon's property from the residential lots, whereas you will have a landscape parking lot now that would obstruct the view, as well as the newly proposed building, which has a residential character or the architecture to it. An ingress driveway is proposed along Laurel Street and an egress driveway is proposed along Scott Avenue. The design and the site circulation thereby minimizes the need for traffic from the proposed non-residential use from entering onto residential streets. Please note that majority of the traffic discharging from the site will be heading towards Main Street. In summary, the granting of the variances will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. The requested relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, and that the variance will not substantially impair the intent and the purpose of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. I did review your recent 2023 master plan reexamination report. One of the goals that is stated and that actually drew my attention was preserve existing residential neighborhoods. The master plan re-exam says this goal remains valid and is carried forward. The borough established the R7B infill overlay residential district in 2014 to encourage residential infill redevelopment on abandoned commercial and accessory use non-conforming parcels in the R7 zone in order to maintain the existing residential pattern of the development. It also continues to say, continue to discourage encroachment of commercial or industrial in the single-family neighborhoods. Although the goals of the master plan is to maintain the existing residential pattern of the development and discourage encroachment of commercial or industrial use, this goal applies broadly to the entire township or the R7 zone. This section of R7 zone, where the subject property is located, is unique and requires requires further assessment because few properties within this section of R7 zone lie within the flood hazard area and need to be evaluated separately. Generally, due to the stringent requirements for new construction of residential properties within flood hazard areas and subsequent high construction costs, developers are dissuaded from constructing single-family residential uses within such area. Additionally, given that there is a risk to human life, many local zoning ordinances have adopted standards which reflect DEP regulations and policies to discourage single-family residential developments in flood zone areas. Blue Acres is one such program which was established to discourage residential development in such areas to relocate homeowners away from flood-prone areas. Middlesex County adopted the original all-hazard mitigation plan on January 14, 2011. The plan was later updated in December of 2015 and most recently in January of 2022. One of the goals addressed in the plan states maintain and enhance local planning and regulatory standards related to future development and investment and activities. Integrate the county hazard mitigation plan with other county and regional planning initiatives, floodplain management, effective municipal and county regulations, subdivision regulations, and comprehensive planning. Consistent with the county's hazard mitigation plan, the Borough's master plan goals and objectives, page 33, recommends goal 9, encourage resiliency, energy efficiency, and sustainability in all development within the borough. Encourage flood resilient building construction in floodplain. Encourage green and blue roofs in all buildings, public buildings, retrofits, and new construction. Develop energy efficiency requirements for new construction. Pursue electrification of borough's fleet of vehicles. The proposed use, although a deviation from the borough's zoning ordinance, is consistent with the overall goals and objectives related to floodplain management. The applicant proposes to construct a building that is floodproof and will contain design elements that support flood prevention and mitigation. The proposal is also consistent with many of the purposes of municipal land use law. Purpose A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of land in the state in manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare, to secure safety from fire, flood, panic, and other natural man-made disasters, to ensure that the development of individual municipalities does not conflict with the development and general welfare of the neighboring municipalities, the county and state as whole, to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangements, and to promote utilization of renewable energy resources. In summary, although the application triggers deviations from the zoning ordinance, the proposed use and the associated site improvements are generally consistent with uses along the northerly side of the property and across the street. As testified by the architect, the proposed building will be designed with floodproofing, flood vents, and other design elements to support the counties and boroughs' flood mitigation efforts. The site is particularly suited for non-residential uses as it is surrounded on 3 sides by non-residential uses, which are much more intense and industrial in nature. The applicant has also agreed to provide electric conduit to a parking space to comply with the state's energy efficiency initiatives and the recently adopted state law pertaining to electric vehicle charging. The applicant has agreed to add a 6-foot high fence closer to the residential property. The applicant has agreed that there will be no outdoor storage. The applicant has agreed that there will be no manufacturing use on the site. The applicant has also agreed that there will be no trucks, tractor trailers, etc. Visiting the site. The applicant has agreed to reduce the number of signs and the size of the proposed sign. As discussed at length in my testimony, the benefits of the deviation from the local zoning ordinance resulting from the granting of the variance therefore substantially outweigh any detriments. In fact, we believe there are no detriments. We therefore kindly request the board to grant the variances. I do have detailed explanation for all the C variances that are requested, but since this is a D variance, those C variances are subsumed by the D. But if the board would like, I can go through those as well.
That's okay. Let's concentrate on the use first.
Vina, thank you very much for your detailed and well-presented planning testimony. Mr. Chairman, do you or any of your board members or your professionals have any questions of Vina regarding her testimony?
Okay. First, I'll ask John. John, do we have to do a balance test here?
So we have to talk about the suitability of the site, which we heard. We talk about special reasons for the D variance, which we heard as far as advancing a variety of purposes of zoning. And then looking at that along with the negative criteria and the negative criteria where we're considering whether there are substantial impacts that may result as a result of the application. We also consider the context of the borough's master plan, which we heard testimony about as well.
Can you very succinctly go through that again?
So
Just in general, because
Are you referring to the?
balance
To the
test.
balance.
Yeah.
Sure. So as of now, you have a site which has a home which is not in a great condition. There are 2 accessory structures on the site. It's not a well-maintained site. It's surrounded by non-residential uses. You have a scrapyard, you have a recycling facility facing the property. The entrance of the site on Laurel Street is through a dead-end street, which is also, it serves the non-residential use. From what I see, when it will be developed, should the board act favorably on this application, the building that is proposed is aesthetically pleasing. It is designed such that it resembles the architecture of other residential properties, or it has characters or a feel of a residence. The use that is proposed is the most benign use compared to what exists on 3 sides of this property, because here we are talking about a storage / office warehouse type of use, a flex space. I think John described it accurate, more like a flex space. But the applicant has agreed that there will be, when it comes to non-residential uses, you have negative impacts in terms of noise, traffic, the outdoor storage that comes with it, the pollution, the visual impacts, right? So here the applicant has agreed there will be no manufacturing use, nothing that creates noise or sound. The applicant has agreed that there will be no tractor trailers or trucks that will be visiting the site. So the traffic impact will be minimal on the site. Again, the building is aesthetically pleasing. This building is set back as far as it can be physically on the site so that it does not really impede. Because if you think about it, and Dave and I had this discussion prior to the meeting, if the property was to be developed with even a single family home, 2 homes, right? One that is on Laurel Street and the other one is on Scott Avenue. The problem with the Scott Avenue piece is it's narrow. So the building that would have to be built there, again, has to meet the floodplain elevation requirement. So the building is going to have a base flood elevation of 15 feet. And then, so you have a narrow lot with a 35 feet high building, because that's what is permitted by the zone. You're going to block light and ventilation on the other lot. Now you have an ideal situation where the building is set back further. You have some screening or a buffer that visually blocks the Beacon Avenue property. So I feel that the benefits of this use are much significant or much more than what negative impacts are created. In fact, that I don't feel there are any negative impacts to the property. We have agreed to the lighting. We have agreed to the comments made on landscaping. Yes, there was issue with the signage that was proposed. We have significantly reduced the signage. So I believe that the benefits outweigh the negative impacts. I hope I answered the question.
Very good. Yeah, you did.
And
Thank
Vina,
you.
just a follow-up question. You did mention in your outline that you felt this was an appropriate use as a transition.
Yes.
And the fact that if you did have, maybe you could just clarify, if you did have
Sure.
a dwelling on the property, how would that visually look if you were looking both from the Laurel Street and the Scott Street side in terms of the adjacent commercial businesses?
I mean, you have the scrapyard recycling facility, and then you have this piece. There are other homes, and the key to this is that the entire residential neighborhood, the homes, they're not in the flood hazard area. There are only couple of properties, and I believe that those are those vacant parcels that are in the flood hazard area. Beyond that, they're not in the flood hazard area. So most of those homes have lower height, a different architecture. If you have a home on this property, it has to be elevated. So it is going to look out of character. Whereas now you're proposing this building, which is offset, which is not really so close to the property line. So I feel that that will have a lesser impact. It will be more consistent, and that would be the most benign use. When you change between, like, to give you an example, even not talking about non-residential, right? You have single family homes. And then what does a town do? You want to have another use between a multifamily and a single family. You want to have something that is medium density. So that's where you propose duplexes, you propose townhomes. Those are called transitional uses to, there's no stark difference between a single family and a commercial. In this case, I believe this use acts like a transitional use because you have heavy industrial use on one end, and then you have a quiet neighborhood. So that is why we thoughtfully proposed this use, and we had a lot of discussion on what we can limit. We don't want to have a car detailing place in this location because that would create a nuisance. But if you have a storage type of use, which is benign, less traffic, less noise, that would be a perfect transition. And that's.
Thank you, Vina, for that explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Any board members have questions on the planning testimony? John, do you have any comments?
One question, there was, Mr. Vaughn's testimony mentioned a 6-foot fence. I don't recall hearing that
Yeah,
during Mr. Lieber's testimony. I thought we said we weren't doing a fence, so I just want to clarify whether there is or is not going to
I
be a fence.
believe Mr. Lieber said that if the board requires,
Correct.
we could put a 6-foot
Okay.
fence.
Yeah,
So-
if the board would want that as a condition of any.
So the
potential approval.
applicant, what I said is the applicant
Okay,
is
that's-
willing to, if
Yeah, got it. Thank you. And then the last point I just want to make, there was reference to utilizing renewable energy resources as one
was-
of the special reasons.
it was in reference to the electric charging that we added afterwards.
I don't think that's renewable energy though, necessarily. I mean, if I
It's
charge,
energy efficiency.
okay, perhaps we don't rely on that as one of the special reasons. Thanks.
Fair enough. I think
Fair
Vina's point was that we're willing to comply with EV.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
that's
get
all.
it.
Yeah.
Just-
Okay. Thank you.
Clarifying our record.
What about parking? How many parking spaces are required?
We are required 11, we are providing 11. And in fact,
That's based on what? Just office use and the square foot of the building?
it's the square foot of the building. And I also want to point out that we are providing the electric charging station. The state allows you to count that as 2 spaces. We are not counting that as 2 spaces. We are providing what is required. So we have 11 required, we're proposing 11.
John, you agree with that? For the calculations?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? No?
Thank you,
Okay.
Vina.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
No, those are our witnesses. I presume you're going to open it up to the public and then we can go from there, Mr. Chairman?
So let's get back to the fence before that.
Sure.
So I kind of heard that you're willing to put a fence up, but you can only go so far because then it's wetlands.
I believe Mr. Lieber testified to that. Correct, Mr. Lieber? Yeah. Mark, why don't you come up? If the answer is yes, Mr. Chairman, but I'll let Mr. Lieber clarify.
The Department of Environmental Protection no longer allows permanent fences in a wetland area. I'm looking at the plan. Most of this would be in a wetland buffer. I would have to check if there's a permit available to put it in the buffer. I just know you can't put it in a wetland.
And we would go up to Scott Street to the trash enclosure?
Pretty much.
Or anything
But
that's
that covers,
permittable.
that pretty much covers
the gap.
Any houses, because behind that, there's no houses.
There couldn't be a house on Laurel Street anyway
Right.
because there's no way to get to it and it's
And that's
all wet back
wetlands.
there.
Yeah. So we don't need a fence on that part, but we do need a fence on the other part. Where the house could be built on that lot.
Correct.
So I don't know if other board members agree, but I'm kind of inclined to ask for a fence.
And the applicant's willing to accept that as a condition.
Okay, 6-foot high fence?
Yes.
Okay.
Instead of the wall.
I'm sorry, what?
Instead of the wall.
No, the wall's just a 12-inch landscape wall, just to make the grade change from the parking lot down. So you'd have fence, I'm sorry, you'd have wall, fence, pavement
That's to level it out.
to level it out. Yeah.
All right, any other questions? We're kind of wrapping up. No. I'll open it to the public now. Anybody in the public wish to make comment on this application? Okay, come forward. Anybody on? Okay, we'll swear you in.
Gary Vrabel, V as in Victor.
Raise your right hand, sir. Solemnly swear or affirm that you will testify truthfully before this board.
Yes.
Lower your hand. Your first name and spell your last name.
Gary Vrabel, V as in Victor, R-A-B as in boy, E-L. Yes, B-E-E-L.
Your address, please.
111 Scott Ave.
And that's first house in this, or is it on?
Well, to clarify things and probably make it go a little quicker considering the time. Myself and my father is here and I'm representing him too, as well as there was other people on the street. One woman is here. Another one unfortunately went into the hospital. My father owns within this piece of property, well, within 500 feet of this property, 6 separate lots. The one on Scott Avenue, immediately adjacent to the one in question, there's an empty lot. To clarify, it's 75 wide. Then there's another lot, 125, that has a house on it. And the
The address that you use?
yes, yes. In addition, there's other homes. He actually lives for 65 years on Scott Avenue, 3 or 4 houses up, as well as having a business around the corner, Economy Auto. We're established there for a long, long time. The property in question and my biggest concerns tonight, I guess, are listening to the planner for the most part, where she's referring to that it's completely out of character to do something like this, and there's no detriments to doing it, and a lot of other quoting the comments that we disagree with completely. If this lot in question is converted from a residential to a business use, then our adjacent property now becomes the first house next to the business use. Right now, the house that's there is a buffer. I've heard a lot about how this building, beautiful picture, how the building itself is going to block the view of Beacon. Yes, it may, but it also blocks the view of the river. From those houses, from the house in question and the lots next door, you can see the Round River. With that there, you can't. She's mentioned that what's there now is completely out of character. It's a residential zone, has residential single-family homes. The empty lot that we own is 75-foot wide. That's for a residential single-family home. And the house, I mean, the building that they want to tear down is a residential single-family home. The amount of variances that they're looking for above and beyond the use variance, you've got pages of them. Without getting into all that, our concerns are monumental with this. What I'd like to do is suggest, can we get an adjournment or put this aside so we can get our own planner, we can get our own engineer to refute a lot of the things that were being said here this evening.
Okay, I'll ask for advice from our attorney. John, is that something we could do?
You could carry this, yes.
So-
There's still time to, they're within the time of making the boards to make a decision. Want to hear more evidence?
It's
Or
a
you can carry it.
reasonable request.
The board feels it's a reasonable request, yes.
Okay.
You want to hear more information? Yeah.
You be prepared by next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, how does the board feel about that? I need some comments from the board members.
I guess a month might work. I mean, a month might work. I mean, yeah. What do you think you're gonna, and I'm not going one way or the other at this point, but what do you
Understood.
think, what do you think, and what are you disputing in that? And I'm trying to be neutral here, but it is somewhat unsightly. Like if I lived there, that looked like a pretty nice building there. As long as there's not a lot of traffic going back and forth, which Mr. Egan says there will not be.
Right.
Take him at his word. It looks like a pretty nice structure in an area that is not really, I won't say unsightly, but it's not the nicest of areas.
No,
but
it's not.
Right?
The
So-
home that was there, it was an older couple.
Mhm.
The gentleman passed away years ago. The residing widow just passed away 2 or 3 years ago. But it's zoned as residential. We've been on that street for a long, long time. There's neighbors here on that street for a long, long time. To have that piece to be considered, and I quote again, to make this change and it would follow the existing residential pattern, I disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly. It's not following the existing residential pattern. It's not even going to be residential. In addition to the variances that they're looking for between the lot coverage, the building coverage, the variances for the egress and entrance and exits, needing 75 feet, and if you have 73, well, okay. Needing 75 feet and you have 50 is quite a big change. I mean, I tried counting them. I don't know how many variances you're looking at here, but it's got to be well over a dozen. But our biggest concern is the use. The use, to switch that from a residential to any type of commercial use. And as I said, it's a beautiful building, and I do take the gentleman at his word as to what he's going to put in there. But it shouldn't be there. It should be someplace else. That's a residential zone. It's a residential piece of property. It was zoned that way. He knew that. Build it someplace else.
Any other members have comments or suggestions about adjourning this so that they can prepare a rebuttal?
Before we do that, should we listen to see if anyone else wants to?
Oh, yes, yeah, we'll do that, yeah. But it's coming down to we won't be voting on it tonight. Is that something acceptable to board members?
It's fair.
Fair? Okay,
Okay, and the gentleman who's here, I see that they went through a great deal of presentation, and I'm sorry, but you have to look at what we need. Thank you.
anyone else in the audience wish to make a comment? Anyone else from the public? Anybody online? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
First of all, okay, we'll close the public portion since there's no one else wishing to comment at this time. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, the only request the applicant would make is if anybody's going to submit any reports or any information to the board, that the applicant also get copies of any opposition documents, whether it's letters or issues that they're going to raise at the hearing or whatever they're going to present. I would ask that that also be provided to the applicant before the meeting, the next meeting.
Under legal procedure, I'm out of my area here. Would that be something?
Well, yes, because that gives them a fair
Okay,
feel.
all right,
Documents
okay,
comes to me. Gets.
okay, all right, I'll explain that, okay. So I've just been informed that any documents that you're going to present, such as a map, a drawing, any type of study, would,
And I request the same, if there's any changes or adjustments.
okay.
notify
Well,
me.
it goes through the zoning office.
Okay.
So you submit it to zoning office to Joan, any documents. She will get them to the board members ahead of time.
And the applicant.
And then she'll also get it to the applicant.
Very good.
So the official track to do that is through the construction office, not directly. So there's, so we know exactly which documents we're talking about. And there's no other extraneous documents floating around, right? So,
Correct.
okay,
The Cornell, or the point, the documents need to be in some 10 days beforehand.
Correct.
So we are actually talking less than the 30 days. This may want to be carried till September.
did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
So,
Pulling this over. So just asking, if you were notified, you knew that you were coming to the meeting, why didn't you get an expert and present your piece of this tonight instead of holding, pushing this off for a month or two?
The reason I found out about this 2 days ago, and I respectfully informed my father.
Speak in the microphone. Come up, sir, come up. And you're still under oath?
Yes, I understand. A valid question. I even spoke to this gentleman about it. The reason for that is I just found out 2 days ago about this. My father and mother are both alive. My father is here. He's had a stroke. My mother is advanced Alzheimer's, very, very bad. And I just found out about it. And I believe, and I told this gentleman, I believe that they probably did get notice. I'm not sure one way or another, but I don't want it to make that an issue in that, given that, the fact that we didn't have time to prepare ahead of time, and I apologize to the gentleman before, we just like to have the time now to have to go back and prepare for it the best we could. It wasn't that I even knew about it prior to 2 days ago. No, I understand. I hope that suffices.
All right, so we just had a little conference here.
Yes.
Because you need to have it in 10 days before the next meeting, which is only a month from now. And it sounds like, given the fact that you've only been thinking about this for 2 days, you got a lot of work to do.
Yes, I know.
So what I would propose, subject to other board members agreeing, is that we delay it adjourn it till the September meeting.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
So just to be fair.
Yes.
And that date is September.
23rd, 24th. It's always the fourth
Yeah.
Wednesday.
27th.
27th.
Agreed.
The other thing I would ask, Mr. Chairman, is if you're going to have experts appear at the next meeting,
I believe.
I would ask that at least that information be presented to the board as to
Absolutely.
who they will be so that the applicant is aware. It's not only documents, but for example, if you.
Qualifications.
If you are going to retain an engineer and they're not going to submit a report or anything, we just like to know who that is. and-
Valid. No problem.
Thank you.
Yes.
And does he need an attorney to represent, to do this or not?
That's up to him, but he's not.
He doesn't, okay. All right,
He's an individual.
okay.
Any other questions?
So it'll be September. Give you enough time.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have until October 14th to act, so there's no problems with the timing. Agreed, Mr. Emlin?
I'm sorry, Mr. Penzel.
The board has until October
Oh, until
14th.
for the extension date.
Yes.
Correct. we should be good then.
Yes.
Obviously, the applicant would execute an extension, a consent, but I think we're okay according to Joan's timeline. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to carry this to the September 27th meeting. Okay, very.
Vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, can I have a motion to carry this application to the September 20? It's a September meeting, regular meeting in September. Mr. Bella made the motion to carry. Do I have a second? Mr. Emma seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Mr. Emma.
Yes.
Mrs. Gottstein.
Yes.
Mr. Castle Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Bella.
Okay, this application is held until September. And that's it for cases this evening. Can I have a motion? Well, first, let's open it to the public. This meeting is now open to the public for general comments to the board. Anyone in the public wish to make a general comment to the board, please come forward. Not hearing anyone coming forward. The general public session is over. Can I have a motion? We're going to go through the memorializations. It was organized.
What was smart? You don't want it. In case anybody from the public comes in, you don't want it. You have the, fine, very good. Okay. All right.
Okay, the business now is the memorialization of last month's application. So the first one is case 2304 Interstate Outdoor Advertising. Can I have a motion to approve this?
Motion.
Motion made to approve. How about a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito. Mr. Emma. Mr. Castle Grant. Mrs. Gottstein. Mr. Bella.
Second one is 2310 Verizon Wireless. Can I have a motion, please? Motion to approve, second? Roll call vote, please. Dominic?
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito. Mr. Emma. Mr. Castle Grant.
Yes.
Mrs. Gottstein. Mr. Bella.
Third memorialization, 2311 Live Urgent Care. Can I have a motion, please? In a second? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito. Mr. Emma. Mr. Castle Grant. Mrs. Gottstein. Mr. Bella.
Case 2314 Yorez. Can I have a motion, please? Motion to approve. And second? Okay. Bella. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito. Mr. Emma. Mr. Castle Grant.
Yes.
Mrs. Gottstein. Mr. Bella.
To approve?
Yes.
In a second? Okay. And roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito. Mr. Emma. Mr. Castle Grant. Mrs. Gottstein.
Yes.
Mr. Bella.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve last meeting's minutes? Second, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? And just a reminder that Joan sent out and gave us a form for the League of Municipalities. When do you need that back by, Joan?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. So anybody who would like to go and reserve a room, please get your information to Joan as soon as possible. Any other comments by anyone before we adjourn? Second, is there a second? Okay, Mr. Bella made a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. All right, thank you.